Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody, and welcome to ReZOO, the Zoo Review Podcast. I'm your host, Jack Baker, and today I am joined not by my incredible co-host and fellow passionate zoo lover, Jodie McFarlane, but in fact, by an extra special host, I'm going to say just that one of the best, most passionate people I've ever met in the world of zoos, the fabulous, wonderful, fantastic Connor Davies. Say hello, Connor.
Hi, everyone.
Presented by Pangolin, the conservation podcast. This sister show promises to explore, appreciate, and highlight the fantastic conservation work of zoos from around the world, while also offering a perspective on the visitor experience.
And today we'll be starting a 3-part journey through the zoos of Arizona, and we're starting with the spectacular Phoenix Zoo.
That's right, I'm so excited. Today we are going to be looking back at my Arizona adventure and more formally ReZooing Phoenix Zoo. We're going to chat all about the zoo, the amazing species it's home to, and what I noticed as someone from outside of the USA, kind of going in with a UK perspective. So without further ado, let's get started. And welcome back to the show. Once again, we are discussing the wonderful world of zoos, but this time, of course, there are a couple differences, a couple things I should clarify. First of all, the biggest disappointment of the whole thing, Phoenix Zoo does not contain any phoenixes. I'm just going to keep that out there from the start. It's a dreadful joke. We're getting it all out the way now. There's no phoenixes. Anyone who is out here just for the phoenix content, I'm sorry, none of that. The second terrible disappointment. No, I'm joking.
I knew that was coming immediately.
The second thing that, of course, is different about the show is that I am joined not by Jodie. I am joined by previous podcast guest, fellow passionate zoo person, Connor Davies, who has featured on the show 4 times now. I can't even remember how many times is it.
Fourth. I think I've
this
done.
Will be your fourth.
Yeah. 2 pangolins, 1 ReZOO.
Well, you've really, like, this is the problem is now that I feel like I'm up to like almost 100 episodes. I have no idea of who's been on the show and when. Like, I'm just like, cool, let's go with it. So no, thank you so much for coming in. Jodie will be back. For anyone who is concerned, we have just given her a little bit of a break while we cover the zoos of Arizona, because I went to them all by myself. We thought it was a good idea to kind of get some fresh blood into the show, some fresh energy, and kind of give Jodie some time off, because I have forced her to talk over the last year.
Time away.
Yes, for hours. That makes it sound like there's been some big dramatic like fallout.
You just go sit in a dark room for a bit without your Scottish tones harping on.
Exactly. And she will be back, listeners, do not worry. Sometime soon. We are going to Amsterdam later this year, so we'll be reviewing Amsterdam and potentially Rotterdam Zoo. So all sorts of stuff. She will be back. Do not worry. But for now, we have Connor to talk all about Arizona. And before I talk about Arizona and Phoenix Zoo and all that sort of stuff too much, I thought we should take a moment just to get to know you, Connor, in case anybody hasn't met you before, hasn't listened to the previous episodes, hasn't been familiarized with you and the content that you produce. So I have a couple icebreaker questions. First of all, though, I'm going to ask you, I've realized I was going to ask you icebreakers, but I haven't really asked you to introduce yourself at all in any way formally before the icebreakers. So tell us a little bit about you first, and then I'll ask you the icebreakers.
Yeah, fab. So as I've spoken about before, on a couple of episodes of the podcast, I am an engagement learning presenter who works at Bristol Zoo, or rather the Wild Place, which is the kind of site that the Bristol Zoo operation is currently in the process of moving to. So I look after kind of all the education stuff there, deliver all the public talks and all the school sessions. So kind of a real public-facing role day-to-day in a zoo, which is absolutely fantastic. I also do a lot of volunteering up with Chester Zoo on their youth board. And so we help to kind of advise the governance of the zoo about how to appeal to young people and kind of make sure that voices of young people that aren't often heard within the world of conservation actually have a vessel and a way of impacting and having an influence within the zoo as well. And beyond that, I'm just an absolutely massive zoo nerd, as you well know, Jack. just love to travel around and check out different zoos, check out all their education things, especially as well, because it's quite relevant to my job. But just go have a bit of a nosy as well.
Yeah, I think that's yeah, that sums you up almost perfectly. I feel like there is everything there. I will give you a chance to briefly mention it now, and then we'll come circle back to it to do proper promo at the end. But you have also just started a podcast,
Yes,
so do you
absolutely.
want to
So
give us a brief, like the elevator pitch of that as well?
yeah, so it's me and my partner Steph, and we are the curators of a hypothetical zoo/botanical garden. And each week we bring a different species each of either plant or animal to add to our zoo and explain why we've made those choices and how we'll show them off.
Yes. And we'll be talking. I've gotten a sneaky preview of the first episode, and we will be talking about one of your species in a coming episode with you. As they were present at one of the zoos I visited. So we can chat about that just to tease it out a little bit later on. But now the icebreakers. Now we know who you are. Now we know what you do. Now we know kind of why you're here. Just to give the listeners a bit of a sense of like what you look for in a zoo, what you like in a zoo, what you kind of are your potential like things that you maybe are like, oh, that's less good, or like, oh, this is the best. Like, first icebreaker question: what is your favorite zoo in the world that you've ever been to?
So I have not visited many zoos outside of the UK. I've been to Copenhagen Zoo and I loved it, absolutely loved it. Don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong. But I think my favourite zoo that I've been to, it's a really difficult choice, but I think I really like Cotswold Wildlife Park,
Interesting.
which
Interesting.
I can tell isn't what you were expecting me to say.
No, not at all. Because I've never been, so I don't know anything about it. So I am shocked. And why? What is the reason?
It is, I don't know, it's just got a really nice feel and it's got a nice mix of, it's not too kind of um, over themed or anything. It's not, it's just a really nice day out. It's a nice blend of lovely kind of award winning gardens and a nice range of really kind of strange species as well, and some things that I'd never seen before. So they've got things like the only crowned shifaka in the UK, and yeah, it's big enough that you can kind of like there's plenty to see, but you can kind of do it all easily in one day still, and it's just got a really nice kind of nice friendly feel to it. So I really like that. Um, I mean, it's a really hard choice. So there's about 10 others that I'd put almost at the same level, but that's what I kind of wanted to shout about.
And I'll give listeners a little peek behind the curtain in that I did prep you on these because I was scared that you would have a complete panic attack, and still you look rather panicked. But that's okay. We got it through. Um, and the second icebreaker question that I had. I know listeners, you might want me to ask more about Cotswolds, but it's a point of icebreaker. We're not asking too many questions. The second question, final icebreaker, so not to stress you too much. What is the best enclosure or habitat or space that you have ever seen at any zoo? And if we take into account interpretation, if we take into account species, if we take into account kind of the experience and kind of everything that goes into a habitat, what would be the best one you've ever seen in your life?
Even with the prep, this stresses me out to no end because there are so many. Um, and I really really enjoyed the giant pandas at Copenhagen Zoo. You got really excited thinking I was about to
Traitor.
say that. I'm so sorry. Um, but they were really good. I'm going to say them that was my favourite, even though I can probably think of better ones. I just really liked the way it was presented.
hmm
Because it was kind of above looking down, but not in a kind of bear grotto way that felt really outdated. It was this kind of lovely elevated walkway around, and the two enclosures for the male and female to separate them were, and it's probably a little bit cringy. It was kind of designed in like a yin yang shape, which is it's proper cliche, it's proper cringe, but it was the way they did it was quite nice.
Okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. That does sound pretty spectacular.
Like
It's
on
pretty
paper, it
spectacular.
sounds like it could be really quite overdone and a lot, but they managed it really well.
Okay, I like that. I like that. We'll go with that. It's not at all the species I thought you would pick, given that the species I know to be some of your favourites, giant panda, would not probably feature anywhere near the top of
No,
that
I'll
list
be
if I was
honest.
to guess.
The whole thing, I don't massively like giant pandas. It's just I did
Oh,
quite like that exhibit. I quite a lot of their interpretation was quite good as well. Um,
okay. I mean that's a good enough reason. And I feel like were you able to like so my initial thought, and I know I said I wouldn't ask follow-up questions, like my initial thought going to Copenhagen, the signs wouldn't be in English. Were they still accessible for you as like a tourist to like see and like
they
understand what was
were.
going on?
I I think they had them in both languages. So I think they did have them in English as well. I think it was a translation on the actual signage, which I think I remember being quite impressed by.
That's really good, actually. And that's something I'm going to talk about later on because Phoenix Zoo did something similar. And in a seamless transition, that leads us nicely onto Arizona. So, yes, as many of you may know, I went to Arizona last year as part of the NAAEE conference, the North American Association for Environmental Education conference, where I was speaking about the podcast and the work that I do. And while I was there, I meant on many blah, 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 went on many adventures. Some of them out to the desert. I went and saw some botanic gardens. I went and saw some of the like local kind of art and different kind of spaces. And of course, while I was there, I had to go and visit some of the zoos. And so what the next 3 episodes are going to be is kind of a recap of that trip in just terms of the zoos and ReZooing them in a more formal way, because I did kind of talk about them while I was there in the My Arizona Adventure series, but they were very brief, very short kind of little snippets of my experience. And this one, I wanted to kind of really encapsulate the experience as a whole and like everything that was there and really give them do them justice because I feel like they were fantastic, amazing experiences. And so this time we're talking about Phoenix Zoo. Next time we'll talk about Reed Park Zoo, and then on the last episode we'll talk about the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum as well, which says it's a museum but is in fact so much more than that. So look forward to that one as well. Now, um, the first of those, of course, is Phoenix Zoo. So Phoenix Zoo was the first of the zoos that I went to. It was in Phoenix. I was staying in Tucson, so it meant I had to get a Greyhound bus from Tucson to Phoenix, which was stressful because I got on. The seats weren't properly attached to the ground, so mine was, but the like row in front of me, every time the driver hit his brake, the 2 chairs in front would like slide back and slam into me and the lady sitting next to me. So it was a real stressful journey to get there. Um, and it was just one of those things where those situations where you're like, we can't stop this. Like we're stuck here now. So it was a stressful morning to get there, but once I did, it was 100% worth it, I would say. I kind of really loved the zoo. My first impression was really kind of strong. I walked up and there was so many people like pouring into the gates, and I think it was I went on a weekday, so I could tell it was going to be good. I'd already read articles like about like top zoos in the USA to visit and stuff, so I'd seen it on all these lists, and so I was very, very excited to go. Very, very, very kind of yeah, excited. I don't know. Did you have any questions about like my preconceptions or anything you wanted to know? Did you like have any like preconceived notions of Phoenix Zoo before you ask me questions and we go into it?
I was gonna say I hadn't really given Phoenix Zoo much thought, to be honest, because I mean, if I think of American zoos, I think of you tend to think of the big ones like San Diego, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
Cincinnati, things like that. But I didn't realize quite how big Phoenix Zoo was until I had a look up at the map today to kind of prep for this, and it's really blooming big by the looks of things. Um, but yeah, I like that they've got it quite clearly as well laid out just by looking at the map. You can kind of tell a little bit about what's going on in there from kind of looking at the map. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We've not got in the zoo yet, so
No, that's well. No, to be fair, it's like not somewhere that I would have. I guess like coming from outside the UK, the outside the US, like you hear about San Diego Zoo, you hear about like the kind of animal kingdom parks down in Florida. You hear about like some of the big ones that are like kind of more internationally kind of like recognized. And
Mhm.
Phoenix, I think, is, and for some reason it just had gone under my radar, and I didn't know why. But I was really intrigued to go and check it out because, yeah, it seemed to have, looking at the map, it seemed to have a lot going on. And me and Jodie talk about this all the time. Where like you look at a zoo map, and because they're always printed the same size, you don't really know until you get there quite how big it is. And so my first impression when I walked up was kind of like, this is ridiculously huge. Like, there was like, the gates were like way larger than I could have expected. Like, they're on the map and they just look like a normal standard small visitor center, but they are this huge structure. And then you walk across this bridge and there's like a huge lake on either
Yes,
side. And
that
like,
bridge looks gorgeous and
it's
massive.
fantastic. Yeah. It's so fantastic. It's like beautiful. The whole space is just like magical. Like, and it's such a good entrance. I think especially because like I don't know what, like being in Tucson and being in kind of like the desert area, you don't see many larger bodies of water
Mhm.
like around just generally while you're walking about places or seeing things. So to see one kind of like so beautifully laid out with all this greenery around it, and like it was just such a grand kind of like entrance of like welcome to like paradise, almost, of like we're gonna go in and we're gonna have to see all of this amazing fantastic life. And so yeah, it was really great. It
Yeah, I
did
think
kind
we
of strike me. Oh, what were you gonna say?
Oh, no, you go for it.
It did strike me at this point also the ticket price, which is the most I've ever paid for a zoo, which was $40 for an adult ticket, which was it did take me aback slightly, uh, like, which, because that translates to probably about 35 to 40 pounds if we're
Oof.
talking about UK zoos,
Yeah.
and that's not even what you would pay for London Zoo. So I was like, whoa. Like, so it was this weird mixed reaction, I guess, when I first got there, of like, this is expensive, but also it looks like paradise. So I'm really expecting a lot. They set themselves up for like, I am expecting a lot here. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I
Did
think
you?
I only know of one zoo in the UK that's even approaching that. And I
Mhm.
think theirs is it's either 39 or it might have just cost 40.
Where is that? I'm just
Long
intrigued.
race.
Oh, okay, that they are probably one of the bigger names in the UK, so
Yeah.
that does make sense. But yeah, it was.
Even then I go, whew.
Yeah. And like for a zoo lover to go, oh, like I think this is like one of those things where you're like, okay, like okay, we're gonna have to, we're gonna consider this, and we're gonna really like make them as many podcasts out of this as possible to justify the price. Um, but no, so yeah, I kind of initially I kind of went in. And then kind of you go through across this bridge, you've paid, you go in, and the zoo itself is then split into four kind of trails, I guess, and then the four kind of trails, and then they have a dinosaur of the desert kind of exhibition as well. So five kind of ish trails. So you have the Arizona Trail, which features Arizona wildlife. Funnily enough, you then have the Children's Trail, which features kind of animals that I suppose are more cutesy or like are supposed to be more appealing to children. I don't really understand the theming of this. It did have a farmyard area, which I guess kind of is more targeted at children. So that's kind of the theme of that one. Then they have the Tropical Trail, which of course features things like orangutans, tigers, jaguars, all the different little species of monkey and different types of birds and stuff. So that kind of trail. Then you have the Africa Trail, which is one of the larger ones that features things like rhinos, giraffes, lions, that sort of stuff. So it's kind of broken down into those roughly four areas, which all kind of lead off from this kind of central point that you come into. Now, beyond all the other zoos that we've ever reviewed, if you are able to get the map out now to help yourself follow along, because it does kind of does get a bit loopy. It does get a bit confusing from here. But we're going to start with the least confusing, which is the Arizona Trail. And Connor, I'm going to ask you, because I've been talking for too long, what
Mhm.
species would you expect to see on an Arizona Trail? Because I had no idea going in what was going to be there.
Not absolutely not a clue. I mean, as I was listening when I listened back to your Arizona podcast, I was like, I never knew they had those there. I never knew they had those there.
Hmm.
But I probably expect to see some kind of deery antelope type thing because I feel like pretty much everywhere's got some kind of that, right?
Yeah.
They're pretty anywhere you can find. You're going to have some kind of hoofstocky deery type thing. Um, a couple of cats at least. Like again, someone
Hmm.
probably got a cat that either lives there currently or used to live there at one point and was hunted to extinction. I'm thinking links in the UK.
Yep.
Um, and then beyond that, I don't know. I probably think. I mean, Arizona deserty snakes, scorpions.
Yes. Well, there were plenty of snakes
Yeah,
and
but
little creatures. Yep.
beyond any of that, if you ask me to go down to species name, I no idea.
Yeah, yeah. It really was like, it, and that's what was fantastic. I think about this was like I have always got a soft spot for zoos that celebrate local wildlife, and so to go to somewhere that celebrates local wildlife in such a brilliant way and in such a way that's unexpected for me, because UK when they celebrate local wildlife, and even across Europe when I've been when they celebrate local wildlife, the animals are not that like different to what I would see any like what I would like I can kind of expect what's going to be there. Whereas this, I was like, no idea. No
Going
idea at
totally
all what's
blind,
going to be
yeah.
in there. Like, but like, and of course, it had the things that fall into the categories of like reptiles, birds, and like you could kind of guess roughly. But like when you got down to the specifics, some of the stuff was pretty incredible and pretty cool. Because Arizona, despite being very dry and very kind of in people's minds kind of deserty, is so incredibly biodiverse and has so many wonderful things. And so just to kind of run run you round the trail briefly before we talk about some of my favorite bits, I guess. You first walk in and there's stingrays, like in a little water bay, which initially you're kind of like, why are those there? Well, the Sonoran Desert, which of which kind of Arizona kind of is part of, stretches down to the Gulf of California. So there are sea creatures. So I don't know. Maybe that's the thinking that they're there. You then have an aviary which features all sorts of reptiles, prairie dogs, birds, and all sorts of kind of like reptile kind of tanks of snakes and really cool stuff. You then have something called a ringtail. You have coyotes, you have javelinas, you have pronghorns, you have fish, you have the desert pupfish, you have mountain lions, bobcats, grey wolves. Um, what else? You have the golden eagle, the American bald eagle, and the condor, as well as all sorts of other kind of little birds in aviaries as well. So there's a huge diversity of life just in this first area that was so unexpected. Um, and I guess, do you think I should walk around them like in terms of like and just stop at some of my favorites, or would you like? Is there any that jump out immediately you want me to skip to?
No, go for it. Walk it out. I want to feel like I'm there. I want to feel like I'm walking through the Arizona Trail because it sounds like they've got an amazing range of species.
Yes, yeah. So you walk in, and the first thing you kind of come to is this aviary with roadrunners and burrowing owls and stuff, which were incredible and just wonderful. And like they are so different to kind of like I never think of owls as being on the ground unless they've caught something. So having these little species of birds, especially the owls, sat there just kind of like looking exceptionally grumpy under a bush, just like kind of looking just disdainful at the world at all times, was really a vibe, and I really enjoyed that. And it kind of like linked in. So this aviary also had, it wasn't through doors or anything, it was all kind of an open space. It had these kind of glass tanks with various kind of snakes and stuff as well. So you had then not roaming within the aviary, but you also then had the kind of like rattlesnakes and different kind of um, different types of kind of frog and toad and different things all featured throughout this like first area, which was really nice. Um, and the one that kind of really stood out to me as kind of like a star, and I got a really nice photo of it, so maybe that's why my bias comes in. But it was also quite unusual. It was an albino diamondback rattlesnake. So it was the classic kind of diamondback rattlesnake, but it was this kind of milky, kind of creamy white color, and like even its eyeballs were kind of that white kind of color, and like as a kind of thing to look at, it was such a beautiful, incredible thing, especially when alongside all of these others, like the wall of rattlesnakes that they had. I didn't know there were so many different ways that you could be killed, but there were so many snakes like represented there. It was fantastic, and like I just thought it was so amazing to like see that how one type of animal within one state in the US can be so incredibly diverse in terms of like different ways that it can exist. It was so fantastic. So that was kind of that first era where it had these birds free flying, and then also like, oh, it also had like sorry, before I let you speak, then it also had, so it had the reptiles in tanks, but it also had reptiles in kind of like in like a rocket. So they weren't kind of free roaming in the aviary, but they were out in the open in the aviary and like sitting on this rock, which I thought was a really interesting kind of way of doing it. These lizards, which I thought was really really cool, really really cool, and really unusual because obviously in the UK, if you were to put lizards outside like that, they'd either get picked off by seagulls or freeze. So, like, it was really, really cool. Really, really cool. First
Yeah,
kind of
that
entryway.
brings me on to a few things I noticed. So, kind of before this, I went and watched like a 45-minute long vlog of someone walking around the Phoenix Zoo, so I could feel like you did. I could feel like I'd been there.
Mm,
Um, and this aviary, I think, was probably one of my highlights. Just looking at it, because
hmm
you know me, I love a good aviary. You don't always realise why, Jack, but I really appreciate a nice aviary. um, and um, and just yeah, the way that I think the species chosen were really nice. I absolutely bloody love a roadrunner.
yes.
Excellent, very
hmm
charismatic birds. But also the way that they displaying kind of different taxa of animals in the same place all around the zoo. Because I think,
hmm
especially in the UK, it feels like there's a lot of, oh, you put your mammals and your big birds outside, and
Yeah.
then you have a reptile house, and all of the reptiles from anywhere in the world go in this one reptile house over here in the corner
hmm
of the zoo.
Yeah.
And same with the
Exactly.
fish, you've got your own aquarium and stuff. We're actually having them spaced out and dotted in among the others, I think
hmm
makes people probably appreciate them a little bit more as well.
Yeah, I think so. And it shows how complex an environment in which they live. And it's
Mm.
not just like things in nature don't exist within static kind of silos of mammal. Here is mammal house. This is where mammal lives. Nothing else
Yeah,
lives here. Like they have those little things kind of dotted around. I did forget to mention and give special praise to the prairie dogs, which were also in this kind of first area because they were fantastic and always fantastic because they just look, they're ridiculous little things and I love them. Um I didn't realize how much I loved prairie dogs until I saw them here. And like I have like in the past been quite cruel to like quite cruel. I was about to say it made it sound like I was physically cruel. I was not. Cruel in
yeah.
my
So like,
opinion
what are you
of
confessing to here, Jack?
cruel in my opinion of certain rodenty mammals because I'm like, oh, maybe they're just like they just kind of like big hamsters. But these were fantastic and I loved them and they're just like big fluffy balls. And so I just like loved the whole thing. Like the whole thing where you had these mammals and all these other things was just
It's like on
fantastic. And it
paper, they're effectively a North American meerkat, and
yes,
I
I
absolutely
don't like
hate
meerkats.
meerkats. I dislike them in the past. But
hmm
there's something about these guys that makes them so much more charismatic,
hmm
and that you just can't feel the same way.
Yeah, it's
I don't
they're
know if it's
just
because I don't know if it's because they use their burrows more. Like I've been to seen countless meerkats, and you always see them doing the exactly same thing. Whereas with prairie dogs, they're always like in and out of these holes and
mhm.
just loving life.
It was so good, so good. Yeah, I like I loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it, and it was such a good kind of opener because I was like, okay, we're justifying the price already. I'm impressed. I'm impressed here. You've shown your hand now, Phoenix Zoo. I can see what you're up to. Um, and that was just part one of this trail. So it then continues on, and you come to animals that or an animal that I had never ever seen before, which was a ringtail. Now, a ringtail, were you? If I say ringtail to you, Connor, do you know what a ringtail is?
I do. They have them down at Exmoor Zoo,
I
um,
see. See, I've
and
never
so
been there.
no. So I've seen one before, but I remember the first time I saw a ringtail, and
hmm
it was just like, oh my life, what is that?
Yeah. So for people who don't know, like it's a member, or I think it's a member of the family of like raccoons and coati and like all of these like kind of yeah. Like the the animals that look like burglars, basically. Like if you were to like make a joke about like what they they kind of look like burglars, and it kind of has that vibe, but it's much more like slender than any of the like those other two. Like it's a very like slender, beautiful thing, and it was moving around. I think they tend to be more nocturnal, and because I got there kind of first thing in the morning, it was still kind of plodding around. I went back later in the day and it had disappeared off to bed, but it was still kind of plodding around, and it was like this beautiful, like sleek little creature that like as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, I love you, like I love you, and I'd never seen anything like it before, and it was just like, wow, fantastic, like just brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And like, it wasn't a particularly thrilling, like massive in like space, or like I wasn't like blown away by the presentation, but like the species itself was enough of the magic for me because I'd never seen it before, and like I just thought it was spectacular, really spectacular. Um, yeah, I don't know. You probably don't have. If you, I feel like the vibe of these episodes is just going to be, if you have comment, just interrupt me. Or like I'll throw it back to you occasionally. But if you do think of something, just interrupt me. Uh, um, but yeah, did you have anything, or shall I keep going?
No, go for it. I mean, yeah, I love a ringtail. I
Mhm.
they're just they're really interesting. They look like so many different things at once.
Yes.
I
Hmm.
think that's the kind of thing because it looks kind of like a koala. You can see the resemblance, but it's much smaller. It kind of looks like a
Yep.
mouse lemur, but then it's got the ringtail of like a ringtail lemur, and it's just kind of it doesn't look like it's real.
No, it's like so. I think in the last episode I described a fossa as like if a cat, a dog, and a mouse all ran together at high speed and just like
Yes.
somehow became like bang, like into one thing. So I think in like if you were to do it with this, it would be like a cat, a raccoon, and a ring-tailed lemur ran
Yeah.
into each other at high speed. But then also it kind of has like a mousy face. Like it's kind of
Yeah.
like all of these things just like smashed into each other really fast. That's kind of the vibe, and they're just so bizarre, but so beautiful, but bizarre. Um, now I, I feel like what I'll do is I'm going to group a couple of these animals together because we've got kind of. I'm going to move. The next animal would have been coyote on the trail. I'm just going to plonk that down, and we're going to talk about some of the animals that came before it, and then we can talk about predators and like carnivores all at
Yeah.
once, I think. So the next animal on the trail in that case was the javelinas. Now, I did not realize how common these animals were. So, like, imagine like you're just walking around your local town if you're based in the UK. You wouldn't be used to seeing a kind of wild pig running around. Um, well, in Arizona, in Tucson, and all these things, like yeah, they will come in and they will eat out of the bins, or they will push things over, or they will just trot around like they own the place, and they do because they're fantastic. And so in this space in the Phoenix Zoo was that an animal, the javelina, that I just instantly had this charismatic connection to because it was just like owned the place. It wanders around the whole of Arizona. It's and to see it this close and this magically, like I just loved it. I just loved it. For those of you who didn't listen to my Arizona adventure, javelina, I think translates to something like it's like spear tooth or spear, like it's like, and so it's kind of this like pig with spear teeth, and it's just the best. And I've always got a soft spot for pigs. Jodie, when she's not here, I can say this. Jodie hates pigs because of Peppa Pig. Here in the UK, she has been traumatized by having to listen to that song thousands of times while working in an aquarium, the Peppa Pig theme tune. But I love pigs, and I love, and therefore love javelinas. And so they were
Yeah.
next up, and they slept for most of the time I saw them. Pretty much everywhere I saw them. I saw them later at the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum. They were sleeping there too, but they were just magical. Like yeah, I just love them, love them, love them, love them.
Those teeth are incredible as well. We've got
Mhm.
as part of our kind of collection of animal artifacts at the zoo, we've got a javelina skull, and oh my god, seeing it out of context and not realizing what it is, it's horrifying because those teeth are they're massive. Um, Even seeing it in context isn't much less scary. But I think they've got quite a soft face that softens it a little bit. They're
Yeah, and
quite
they were
cute
all
for a big
piled.
pig.
Yeah, they were all piled on top of each other, just sleeping. So I was like, "You're not scary," but also I wouldn't want to be in there. Like that's the kind of vibe they gave. Um, and yeah, so they were excellent. Next to them were what was up next? Oh, probably my new favorite deer antelope creature, the pronghorn. Like, so the pronghorn is a type of kind of like, it looks like an antelope deer type thing. I believe it's more closely related to a goat, I think. Um, and it is kind of design. It's yeah, it's kind of the only thing that looks anything like this pretty much in North America. this kind of, so yeah, imagine this kind of deery shaped animal, deery goaty shaped animal with these beautiful kind of twisty horns, beautiful beige kind of white, beige, brown pattern all over it. They're just so incredibly beautiful. And this, it was just so beautiful. And like, I love them. I love them, love them, love them. Have you, can you back up how beautiful a pronghorn is, Connor?
Yeah, absolutely stunning. It was that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think deer or kind of dairy type things are a species or a group of species that aren't
Mm-hmm.
massively kind of appreciated, because I think people have the opinion of once you've seen one, you've kind of seen them all.
Mm-hmm.
Pronghorn changes that though, doesn't it? Pronghorns are, there's just something about them.
Mm-hmm. I could have stood there all day and just like admired them. Like, I just think they were so beautiful. Like, I just love them. I think they were like so fantastic. I also like, I've told this backstory many times because I've stolen it from just the zoo of us, where I heard about it first, and I tell everybody as soon as I hear it because I think it's so interesting about the fact that like they evolved alongside a North American cheetah, which then went so they like were in this like arms race of having to learn how to be faster and faster and faster and faster and faster so they could outrun the cheetah. Then the cheetah went extinct, and there's nothing else that is anything near the speed of a pronghorn, like predator wise. So now they just have these antelope things that just boom, like as fast as you can imagine across the like grasslands, but nothing can catch them. So they're just like running about super fast for no reason anymore, which I think is just great. Why step back when you've learned to go that fast? Like, it's just a great vibe. Um and so yeah, that was kind of another complete highlight for me because I thought heard about them before I'd seen pictures of them. And again, it was like one of these things that like I had never seen before in real life. And I think that was kind of the magic of this first section was these all of these things that like I just never seen before. And it was just so fantastic.
Yeah,
Um
there are no pronghorns in zoos outside of the US,
Interesting.
which
I
is
want
probably why you've never seen them before.
Yeah, I wonder what, because like obviously tigers are not from the US, but they're there. Like we don't have pandas here in the UK, but we have. So why has there been this kind of like non like transfer of pronghorns? That's interesting. I might look into that. That's some homework for me, because I'm intrigued.
I wonder if it
Do
is
you
just
know
that
the
they
answer?
are. I don't know. I wonder if it's just that they are, quite common around North America. There's no kind of massive need for it, I guess. But then, by that logic,
Well,
places everywhere have meerkats.
exactly. And also like, yeah, that's it. It doesn't really make, yeah, because I think it was like, I think it was a I can it was like peninsular pronghorns that they had, which are found in this tiny little area and they're endangered. So that, yeah, it doesn't
Hmm.
make sense. Interesting question, zoos. Get your act together, please, and get me some pronghorns ASAP. Um, and so yes, then so we'd kind of seen these kind of pronghorns, we'd seen the javelinas, we'd seen the ringtail, and then of course there are a large amount of predatory animals. We've got our cats and dogs. You've got in this area mountain lions, bobcats, coyotes, and the Mexican gray wolf. And like all of those are super interesting. All of them were like put in such interesting kind of spaces with which were kind of designed like rock face, like you would find them kind of naturally kind of like hanging around. So the cats were kind of like in these spaces and it made them really hard to find because they would just like ram themselves into like little crevices and kind of disappear. Um, and because of their coloration, even when they were sitting kind of somewhere obvious, you wouldn't really see them. So that was cool. And then, of course, the dogs had kind of like these bigger, open, more wider kind of areas to run around in, which made them impossible to see. I didn't see either of them, but that doesn't mean I don't want to talk about them. Particularly, I want to talk about the Mexican grey wolf because it is a particularly interesting one because even though there were once thousands of them, they were almost wiped out by the mid 70s in the US of A. And just a kind of handful, I think I read somewhere there was maybe 11 released, or there was 11. Yeah. Okay. So there was the 11's a spoiler for later on. Don't worry. There was a very few of them left. But thanks to conservation work of various organizations like the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Mexican grey wolves have actually been bred. And in when was it? 1998. The 11 of them were re-released into the wild, and now there's been kind of like a slight growth in number. Like it's been slow, the growth of the numbers back up, but they have kind of continued to grow. And I think I didn't know that story. I didn't know there had been I didn't know what a Mexican grey wolf was until I looked up a picture of it because I didn't see it at the zoo. So like, but I think it's such a great kind of like an interesting story to kind of have this wonderful local conservation success story kind of represented in the zoo. And I think the good thing about the space was like, even though I couldn't see them, you shouldn't be able to see everything in a zoo. And in a zoo of this size, even if you go around multiple times in a day and you run around, you're probably not going to see everything. And I think that was the fantastic thing about this space was like they disappeared and they wanted to disappear. And so they didn't have to come out and see me that day. But knowing they were there and now knowing this story made me like so fall in love with them. I thought they were brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Did you know the story of the grey
I
wolf, Mexican grey wolf?
I didn't know. I knew the story of there's quite a few wolves that have been in similar positions. I think there's a red wolf as well that was in a similar position. Um,
Mhm.
so I knew that, but I didn't know Mexican grey wolves. Do you know? Did Phoenix Zoo play a part in that re-release? Were they involved in that, or was that before their time? Because I know Phoenix is a relatively young zoo.
So I had a look. Well, I had a look in the kind of like website of for information on Phoenix Zoo website, and I couldn't find anything in there in
Hmm.
particular. But I do think that like there are. I realize now that I have not kind of written down the concept. Well, actually, we're about to come to it. We're about to come to a conservation project based in Arizona. If you would like me to talk about that,
Yeah, go for
or
it.
do you have more points to make about the wolf? Do you have more thoughts on the wolf?
No, no, no. I mean, it's
Okay.
probably a very nice wolf, but it's a wolf in it.
Yeah. How rude. How rude. No, like, so yeah, like, they mean, I don't know if they had a hand in that, but what they did have a hand in was the desert pupfish, which is a bizarre little fish that it's kind of, they breed them in ponds within the zoo. So there's kind of, I think there's a pond in the Arizona Trail, and I think they said there's a pond in the Africa area as well, where they breed these fish and then they release them. So what makes them kind of interesting is that they've kind of developed to live in water, which of course in the desert has like very high temperatures, very high levels of kind of like salt, and very kind of like what many species of fish wouldn't kind of find hospitable at all. And they're just these tiny little fish. And then when it gets too hot and the water starts to dry up, they'll then kind of bury into the mud and wait for that kind of water level to kind of come back and kind of the water to heat up and warm up again and kind of yeah. So it's there are these bizarre little things that live bizarre little lives, but they are endangered. And so Phoenix Zoo are part of a program where they are breeding them within the kind of zoo in these ponds, and then they can go and release them back out into the wilds of Arizona, which is quite an interesting kind of way of doing it. And I think it's a nice way of doing it because like they do it in a way that like the public can see the conservation in action. Like there's this pond right here, and if you look for long enough, you might see a fish swimming around, and then they take those fish and they put them out into the wild, um, which is really exciting, and I think could be a big success. Given I think I read the females can have 800 eggs in 1 year,
Oh
so
wow!
I wish
So
them all
hopefully
success
it
with that
won't
because
take
that seems a lot of
too
fish.
long to boost those numbers back up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're. I like. Well, that's the thing. Like everyone's like, oh, like look at the mammal reintroductions. They're so slow. If you want a quick and interesting, like, boom, look how many of these out there are. Like, go for like weird things like fish, invertebrates. Like they reproduce. Like there's no time left. They are willing to fight to survive, and good for them. Honestly, good for them. Um, and yeah, so that was one of the kind of conservation stories of the Arizona Trail, which I thought was quite fun.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, great that
yeah,
they're showing off that conservation as well because it's I I mean zoos have a kind of key responsibility to do that work, but often the way they talk about it is look at this thing we're doing, over in the country where they work, or oh we've got these things behind the scenes too. So to actually be able to
mhm,
show that conservation work and see where it happened as well, I think is a really powerful thing for visitors.
exactly, exactly. Like it's that like visual link, which is really hard to achieve, and I
Hmm.
just yeah, I
Absolutely.
just loved it.
For certain projects, it simply wouldn't work because you need those kind of controlled environments that can't have people banging on windows or kind of people getting too close and the animals getting used to the public. But where it's possible, it's great to show it off.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And like, yeah, that actually leads nicely onto another success story that we have in terms of conservation. So I'd kind of group these last three together as well as kind of a thought process in my mind. And they are the golden eagle, the American bald eagle, and the condor. Because, and if we're talking conservation success, no, no better example than our lovely friend, the California condor, which was similarly almost extinct in the wild, similarly to the wolf and to the kind of these little fish. And then throughout the kind of 80s, 90s, they were reintroduced, and now they're up. I think I wrote it down. Um, 330. Yes. So they're almost extinct in the 80s, and there was a reintroduction, and there are about 330 California condors now living across, well, they're birds with an 11-foot wingspan. They are all over the place. They are just kind of like, they go wherever they want. And I think people had said they've been spotted in places like the Grand Canyon and all the way up kind of California and down to Arizona and all that kind of coastline of the US, which is really, really exciting. And I don't think I'd ever seen a condor before. Certainly not a California condor before. And like, it was enchanted. Like, I have never seen a bird that big. Like, like, I've seen ostriches and cassowaries and stuff, but in terms of like wingspan, like, I have
Yeah.
never seen anything that size. It was fantastic. And the ones that they have here at the Phoenix Zoo, um, were kind of, yeah, they were part of the reintroduction program, and so they were raised at San Diego Zoo, and then they were reintroduced. However, one of them was poisoned, and couldn't be released again because he grew kind of weak and then kind of had to have medical treatment and then became used to human contact, so couldn't be released. And so now they act as ambassadors for their species at the Phoenix Zoo. But yeah, I thought it was kind of like an interesting kind of story of like, oh, fantastic success. Also, however, those threats still exist, and now we have these ambassador, and like the positive spin is, of course, now they're ambassador species, but like ambassadors of their species. But like, it's important to remember when things are reintroduced, that doesn't make the threats go away, such as people poisoning them with lead. So, like,
Absolutely,
yeah,
and that's also a really good point to raise against kind of critics of zoos that say, oh, we should just always put the animals straight back in the wild, and that is that is the aim. That's what what we love to do. But even when you do that, even if you try to make the habitat as kind of as animal friendly and as safe again as possible, those threats are
hmm
still there, and so it's not quite as cut and dry as just let them all go.
exactly, exactly. Like, it's yeah, it's a very complicated thing, and it's something that actually we'll touch on again later on. I've got another little conservation story I'm going to drop in about just how complicated these reintroductions can be,
Hmm.
because that seems to be the main way, like, this zoo in particular is working, is like through reintroduction programs. And so we can kind of touch on that a little bit later as well.
Yeah,
um
it's
but
also
yeah, the
what I noticed earlier is that they tell you those stories about the animals that they've got. So they have animals that you
Mhm,
might look at and go, "Well, why is this in an enclosure that looks like this?" And so I
mhm.
think the goal was it the bald eagles
The bald
were in
eagle, yes.
they were in a slightly smaller aviary, um, but it's because they actually were injured and can't fly effectively,
Mhm,
and so they don't require the same amount of space because they're not as mobile, and so actually having a smaller enclosure is easier for them to move around, and rather than just kind of
mhm,
letting that go kind of unmentioned in their interpretation, they actually tell those stories and explain it as well, which is really, really useful in
mhm.
kind of understanding why things are the way they are and why those enclosures look like they do.
Exactly, exactly. And like, yeah, that's actually, I love how you weren't even there and you didn't know I had that written down, and like you brought it up anyway. Ah, you're good. Jodie should watch her back. No, I'm joking. No, and it's so true, because it's like nice to have that easily spelled out right in front of the visitor. Here's the story, here's why it's here, and here's what you can do to kind of like help, like, support our work. Just being here supports the work. The money from the ticket goes to support the work, or like whatever it is. Like, it's so important, and I thought was a really fabulous kind of, yeah, especially with the bald eagle as well. I thought it was quite fun. Like, yeah, I did have I mentioned this in my Arizona adventure, and I'll mention it again here. When I was alone in this zoo, all I could think about while walking around was just funny movie quotes to myself. And at this point, with lots of birds flying around, it was giving. So the American bald eagle was reminding me of. Have you seen the Adams Family Values?
I don't think I have. I know.
Christina Ricci as Wednesday Adams, who is the original in my mind. I know there have been other interpretations, but Christina Ricci as Wednesday Adams is the ultimate Wednesday Adams in my mind. Um, and this is not something a conservationist should find funny, but it's my type of dark humor. She shoots. So they're doing. She's sent to summer camp, and she's like pulling like bows and arrows, and she shoots and like one up into the sky, and this eagle falls, and Christina, what's her name? Oh, the woman from Mamma Mia.
Christian
Christine
Winsky.
Baranski. Christine Baranski is like, oh my, it's an American bald eagle. Are they not extinct? And just deadpan delivery of child Christina Ricci. They are now. I'm like, it's not funny, but like the comedy of the film, it just is so good. So that was running through my head for the bald eagles, and then of course Jurassic Park. Um, the late great Richard Attenborough's quotes about how he tries to justify Jurassic Park because if he'd released a group of condors on the island, then it would have been fine and everyone would have been okay with it. And I'm like, oh, well, you're probably right, but condors also don't eat people, so I feel your argument is flawed there, Mr. Hammond. So yeah, that's what this is all that was going through my head the whole time I was there.
This is why you need to go to zoos with other people. This is,
Exactly.
I,
Otherwise, I lose my mind.
yeah,
Uh,
I'm worried for you.
yeah. And yeah, just before we move on from this area, I kind of like when I was on the website for Phoenix Zoo, I was kind of looking through their conservation projects, and I've tried my best to kind of like link those to the species, but there was a couple here that weren't really species specific that I thought I'd highlight. So, um, in terms of like their work in Arizona and the kind of surrounding areas, they do a project in the U.S. Mexico borderlands, um, where they are kind of like looking at where there are limited resources, and so they're monitoring the kind of mammal communities in that area to kind of see where they are, how they move, things like jaguars and ocelots, like how they exist within that space, so they can kind of help better kind of like or feed into kind of better infrastructure around that area to protect them, which I thought was really interesting. And then also the second project that I wanted to mention was something to do with kind of wild water. And so in Arizona, they have kind of riparian corridors, and water is a really important part of kind of those environments, and so they are kind of trying to like um, yeah, just kind of understand the relationships better between the wildlife and the water and the necessity of water within those areas, which is especially important, of course, in an area where there is a changing climate and they're having to kind of go and deal with all of these kind of issues. So I think that's kind of like a nice kind of conservation
Yeah,
success
absolutely.
story. Yeah. Now, lunchtime. Next was lunch. Um, so I had seen all this conservation success and it was roasting hot. So, of course, I was hungry. So, yeah, it was time to find something to eat. And kind of the Arizona Trail, the good thing about the design of the zoo is that kind of these trails loop back all to this central point. So, I just went to kind of what I guess would be considered the main restaurant in that center section. Got a chicken burger and chips and a Diet Coke, and fell into the classic thing, which I forget every single time I go to America, which is when you order food, it's about 6 times as large as the portion you would get in the UK. And when you order a medium drink, you get handed a 5 liter bottle of whatever it is that you want to drink, which I'm not complaining about because I was very dehydrated and I did need a lot of juice to kind of keep me going. But I was like, oh my god. Like, oh my, like, I don't know how you can walk around a zoo all day, people, with so much food in your systems. I was like, I ate it and then instantly just wanted to nap because obviously I wasn't going to leave any because that would have been ridiculous. Uh, what is full, really? So I just like, yeah, I ate and then I just kind of sat there like, I could just go for a nap. It's perfectly warm. It's perfectly like, yeah, but I plowed on. I would say the lunch was good. Um,
Was the price of the lunch kind of mirrored by the price of the ticket? Because the ticket was more expensive than we'd expect over here. Would you say the food was as well, or was it a bit more reasonable?
I would say the food was as expected. Like it wouldn't like this price didn't shock me of the food. It wasn't like particularly high, but it wasn't like a particular bargain. It was just kind of like, yep, that's a zoo priced lunch.
Yeah, that's the thing,
Which
isn't it?
like
Zoo prices are just higher than you pay anywhere else.
like and like it's fair enough. And like the food was not like it wasn't like a gourmet meal, but it was nice enough. Like it was nice, like enough food. There was a good range of options in terms of different things for different people with different needs, and like yeah, it was quite nice. And I yeah kind of enjoyed it. It was yeah like you that way where I'm like, I don't have anything thrilling to say, really. I did see somebody drop one of their 5 gallon like bottle like cups of juice on the floor, which was the
No.
most upsetting thing because I was like, this is why you don't do portions this large, people. Because you've just flooded the entire restaurant with this jug of like
Oh, the poor staff member
Pepsi.
who had to go and clean that up.
Yeah. I think it was one of those ones where you just you see a little bit of the light in someone's eyes die where they're like this has clearly happened to them one too many times. It was one of those. But they pushed through. It was great. The lunch was lovely. Moving on. Before we talk too much about destroying people's souls, we should move on to the other trails. Um so yes, up next was the children's trail, which was kind of yeah. I think it was designed in terms of themage to be aimed at children, but the animals that were there were some of the most charismatic and interesting, which I guess does appeal to children. But also, I'm kind of like, why have you called it this? It doesn't make sense to me to label it as like a children's trail, and it's like it is named after a person, so maybe there's some kind of story there which I should have looked up before recording this. But I do think like I don't think like branding it as a children's trail is necessarily entirely the best thing to do because it contains things like emus, wallabies, different kinds of deer, aviaries, sloths, the farm, pelicans, all sorts of like really interesting stuff. And so like I think you may bypass it if you were a grown up, being like, oh, well, that's just going to be little kiddies things. But actually, there's quite a lot of interesting stuff going on in this next area. Um, Starting with, which I can't really tell where they fell into, but I'm including them here because you had to kind of walk past them to get to the children's area, were the Siamangs, which I pronounce in 100 different ways, none of which I think are correct. How would you say? Is it Siamang? Siamang? Si- like
I've always gone with Siamang.
Okay, good. Okay. I just was like, my dyslexic brain read an I and an A together and was like, so no, Siamang. Perfect. So yeah, you kind of walk past them to get to the children's area, and they are based on an island. So the reason I told you to get your maps out, folks, is that yeah, so you have the Arizona Trail, which is kind of a loop, but then the other trails kind of go around lakes, which makes it a bit more complicated. So the Siamangs are on an island in one of these lakes, which you then walk past to see, and like they were so like I saw them at this point initially, and I just kind of saw two adults kind of swinging around. It was really cool, and then later on in the day, I came back here. And there was a baby, and it was the last thing I saw in the day was like this baby Siamang, like clinging to its mother, climbing the tree, kind of going all over the place, and like just being stupidly independent. And like I love it because for those of you who don't know, Siamangs are a type of gibbon. They kind of, but when they kind of spend some time on the ground, and when they do, they run, but they run with like their hands up in a really funny, like silly way, and it's just very charismatic and lovable. What else is interesting? Oh, when they kind of make this loud, like hollering noise, and they have this kind of pouch in their throat, which kind of swells up. I think it said I looked up; it's to the size of a grapefruit, so it's a big old thing just to make this beautiful booming noise. And they're just like these beautiful black kind of apes and like really amazing, amazing. I assume you have thoughts on Siamangs, Connor.
I love a Siamang. I mean, with kind of apes, they're not my favorite apes. In general, like especially the great apes, but Siamangs and gibbons, I absolutely love because they simultaneously look like one of the cutest things I've ever seen, and yet I know that they would destroy me in a second.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
there's something intensely powerful about an animal that can look so fluffy and amazing, and like you say, really, really charismatic, but that is also just pure muscle and could rip your
Mhm.
limbs off.
It's
Respect
yeah,
it. I
yeah.
absolutely, yeah, I think they're fantastic.
And I think they're another one where, like, I feel like in the UK we don't have a lot of zoos which represent, like, have them as representatives. I can't think. I've never been to anywhere that's seen them. I think there's a couple zoos do have them,
Yeah,
but
I
not
think
many.
because we're based in very different parts of the UK, I think we see lots. I can think off the top of my head of four zoos I've been to. I think that have
Really?
Siamangs, yeah.
Oh,
But I think they seem to be. I mean, because you're up in Scotland, not there's quite a lot of things up there that
no.
you like that England have, but you don't.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I'm jealous. I am jealous. I would like
yeah,
some now, please. Um,
but
doesn't seem
yeah,
fair.
it sounds like a gorgeous enclosure. I love it. I Most zoos do it, but like gibbons on an island, I think is just one of the perfect setups.
Hmm. Because a lot of like smaller monkeys and apes and stuff, like they would disappear into the, like, if you're to put them onto a space like that. Like I'm just thinking of like Bristol Zoo. Like it was really nice, but like those, I feel like we got really lucky because they had the kind of, was it golden headed lion tamarins on an
Yes.
island, and like they were beautiful when you saw them. But I imagine if they like, there would be days where like even the keepers might be like, are there are there are there still like, and like there's something to be said, obviously, as I've just said about the wolf. Like it's good that the animals can disappear, but like I feel like a gibbon, in the way that it moves and the way that it kind of has this thing, like it's very visible from a distance. You don't have to get
Yeah, it gives
binoculars out to be like, where is it?
yeah,
Like,
it gives a perfect way of kind of showing off the way they move through the branches by giving them enough
mhm,
space and a kind of a way to view them that isn't intrusive and means you can appreciate those that kind of full range of behaviors. Gorgeous.
exactly. Mhm. It was just so wonderful, and like it's going to be my lasting memory, I think, of Phoenix Zoo, because they were the last animals I saw, as I said, on the way out, and like I could have sat, like I had to go for the bus, but I could have sat there for days and just like watched them, like, and just so fantastic. I guess then you move on to things like the emus and the red-necked wallabies, which, lovely classics of zoos. I did think it was nice because I think at Edinburgh we have wallabies, but we do not have red-necked wallabies. So that was a nice twist, I suppose, on a classic, for me, um, which I enjoyed. And then I didn't really have much to say. They were in kind of an interesting space. Wallabies are interesting animals, but yeah, that's nothing particularly much to add there. I don't know if you had thoughts on wallabies.
Not massively. It's one of those, I think it's also a kind of side effect of them being in something called a children's track, because you're absolutely right. As soon as I hear like children's zoo, I'm immediately less inclined to go there.
Hmm. Which I guess, like, that's an interesting thing, and that's a whole other issue and a whole other podcast probably. But like, I feel like the whole point of the Chester Youth Board, which you're on, is to like engage more young people in conservation. And I feel like there's definitely something in the fact that when things are labeled as children's, as soon as somebody hits 12, they don't want to look at it anymore.
Oh yeah.
And I
Oh,
wonder if there's something in that. Like, I'd be intrigued to look into that more. It's something that, like, I'm doing my PhD. It's probably too much for me to try and work out. But someone out there, if you're a researcher, go and do that for me, and come back to me with that, because that sounds like an interesting thought. Um, but yeah, so we saw those. They then had something called a Calmean deer, which was a type of deer I had never seen before. Small, cute, lovely. After it came coming after the pronghorn, though, you kind of, big vegetarians were really struggling at this point. Like you were really like, yeah, they were really having a bit of an issue there. But still very, very cute. And then the area that really stood out to me in this kind of children's zone were the aviaries. They were kind of, you kind of had these paths twisting around all of these like incredible kind of spaces. And the two species that really stood out to me in this space were the king vulture and the Abyssian ground hornbill. And so fantastic. You can see pictures of them on my Instagram at the only Jack Baker, on Instagram, because they were two animals that were so, like, their faces were so storytelling, and they had such beauty. And like, I like, there's something about birds where like, I think in the UK I'm used to birds with like beautiful plumage where the color is kind of like on on the feathers, and a lot of tropical birds have that kind of coloration on the kind of feathers. But both of these animals, the color is not in the feathers, the color is in the face. Like the king vulture has this weird like orange and red kind of like puffy like looking face, and then you have the hornbill has this kind of blue kind of checkered and red like markings on its head, like so incredibly gorgeously like bizarre but also charismatic. I just like loved them. Thought they were so interesting. Like, I know, are you a fan of birds? I feel like you are.
I I never used to be, but I love birds now. I think they're absolutely fantastic. The
Mhm.
whole range of them, and king vultures are one of the ones that is up there on my list to see. I've never seen a king vulture, never in any zoos or anything. But I really want to. I think I have a feeling since the last time I went, Cotswolds might have got one,
Your
and
favorite zoo?
so gonna try and get back there. But yeah, I like a bird.
Mhm. I thought it was yeah, and like they're just something like different. And I think having these in a children's labeled zone, I think is a shame in a way because like adults might bypass them. But also I thought it was good in a way because they're the type of things that kids maybe wouldn't normally look at. Like birds like aren't necessarily the things that kids normally gravitate towards. So yeah, I can see the thinking there, and I thought it was quite an interesting one. I really
Yeah, you
liked.
can see that they're interesting species when they've got that bright color and it might attract children's attention. So you can kind of see why they might go, oh, that's something. It looks really interesting. It maybe doesn't look like a normal bird because you just put kind of a songbird in there, that
Mhm.
might not catch children's attention as much. But still,
Yeah.
yeah, it feels like you may be able to take that away from a lot of people that might not visit that area of the zoo as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. Um, Other things in the area though did seem more targeted at kids, so I kind of can see the naming convention. Things like the sloths and the farm, like sloths, charismatic, definite kid pleaser, but again, something you'd maybe miss. Like the kids
I
might
It baffles
like
me that they put sloths over there when literally the other side of that lake is the rainforest tropics trail. It,
yeah.
that I can't understand that.
No, because like there's no Australia trail, so the wallabies and emus kind of make sense.
Yeah,
But like, yeah, sloths make less sense. What makes a lot more sense is the farm, and it was a
yeah,
spectacular farm because it had like the classic like American barn design of that big red barn
nice.
with white kind of like red and white barn with like cows and all sorts of stuff from around the world. So not just like American species, they had like African species of cow and goat and all sorts of stuff around this area. And I didn't spend too long in it because this area was clearly targeted mainly at kids. Um, but I went and had a quick wander through it, and it was actually really nice. And like I think this is really where the kids zone area is. Like it that's the kind of that's what this is set out to do is this farm. And so the story up to it and the story after it maybe don't fit entirely, but this kind of zone
Yeah,
really fits that narrative of like this is kid centric this area. Come and have like a sit, a play, look at the cows and the farmyard animals and just have like yeah, a good time. So that kind of makes more sense in the story of kids areas, I think. Um but yeah, so that makes more sense in my mind as kind of like a thing. I don't have many thoughts on it as like a concept for me because like, but I do see like I do think the value of it is yeah, of course, that it is there to engage kids and like
mhm.
the kids who were running around screaming and have a good time seem to be engaged. So tick, like good. Um, yeah, I don't. Aside from that, in this area, you kind of then get back to the kind of lake, so you kind of loop back round, you kind of rejoin one of the other trails, and then yeah, that's kind of you see pelicans on the lake, you see kind of what were the other things? There's kind of pelicans on the lake. There's an aviary that has like things like ibis and spoonbills, and I've been trying to pronounce this all day. Avocet or avocet. Avocet
Have a
sounds
set, I
sounds
think.
prettier. Sounds a lot prettier. Avocets, and yeah, so they have that kind of space as well. So that's kind of the end of this like kids trail, which of course is much shorter than the first trail in terms
Mhm.
of like the diversity of species that were amazing to me because I'd seen a lot of them before. But it was still a very nice kind of like condensed little area of like, woo, kids, yay! Like that, that kind of was the vibe, and so yeah, it was quite a nice little addition. But yeah, intrigued by the labeling of it as kids. It seemed more kind of like things that didn't fit really anywhere else. So we've called this a kids area and put stuff in, but like, yeah, what are you gonna do? Like, I liked it. I thought it was good. So, did you have any like from your video tour? You were watching like it was a family going round. So, did the kid enjoy the farm area?
The kids have had a wonderful time on this section. They did, to be fair. So I think
Mhm.
um, but yeah, I don't think they were overwhelmed by it. I think it's one of the things that you expect it at a zoo, in quite a lot of zoos, something like a little bit of a petting farm type thing. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think as adult zoo visitors, I don't really pay attention to it that much. I go and check out if they've got anything cool over there, but I
Mhm.
don't. When I hit the goats and I go, okay, I'm out now.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Goats are such a win every time. Every time. Uh, anyway, before we get bogged down by goats, that brings us on to our third trail, which is the Tropics Trail. Now, going the way that I did, um, you kind of like are at this point halfway up the tropics trail. Like it's not like so most the other trails all loop back to the beginning, but the kids trail loops to like halfway around the tropics trail. So we're kind of starting, in my experience, halfway round, but we'll come all the way round to back to where we are now. So don't worry if you're a big fan of like the elephant or the rhino or whatever it is. They'll be coming at the end instead of the beginning. Because of the way that I got lost in the zoo. I will say I did get lost at this point. I was very confused. They did not like the maps were good, but I was also very lost and confused. There was no guidebook. I was just kind of out all alone and confused. And so yeah, just be aware of that you will appear halfway round a trail, which could be confusing for people like me who are overwhelmed by excitement for what's going on around them. Um, and so yes, the first bit you kind of got to at this stage was I think they called it the Forest of Uko, which I think it could be Akko Uko.
I'd go with
This is
Uko,
just
I think.
I think Uko. Yeah, so the Forest of Uko. And it was kind of all, it seemed like a very new area. It was all designed like this kind of like village setting, and then you'd go from the village out on this kind of trail. It was a very good storytelling kind of piece. I thought it was really well done. Of like, you walk through this village, and then you go up this kind of trail into what seems like a jungle, and you kind of go in and you see things like Andean bears, macaw, toucan, blue-billed curassow, and all sorts of other kind of creatures in there. And I thought that was like such a nice little like segment of like clearly the bears are the focus and they're kind of the focus of the theming, and you kind of spend a lot of time walking around them. But they've kind of thought that, well, we're not just giving you a path with bears, we're giving you a path with bears with all of these other little things round about it as well, which I thought was actually really, really nice. And I think was really, really cool. Really, really cool. Um, yeah, I don't know, like I would say this is the best Andean bear place I've ever seen by a mile. Like, I think it was so good. I think it was so good. Reed Park Zoo also had them coming up in the next one, and it was also good. But this was my favorite. I think it was so clever, and it like the environment like that they'd set up had like multiple areas for the bears to like roam around in. It was just like top notch, top notch. What are your thoughts on Andean bears, Connor?
I mean, I love an Andean bear, and having looked around to kind of on this little tour I did earlier, it looks like an absolutely amazing area. Loads of different viewpoints for the visitors to try and see the bears, and again, the way they kind of interweave the different species in it as well. So it's not just
Hmm.
you walk along this path, then you're going to see the bears and nothing else. I think
Hmm.
that is again another strong point from the other places I've seen Andean bears as well, is that it does that a little bit better. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, it looks great. And the one thing that kind of surprised me was quite a lot of the enclosures here is that there's there's not as much vegetation as I'm used to, and it kind of shocked me. I went, oh my god, these places are there's not that much planting and stuff. And then you remember that it's in Arizona, and you go, oh yeah, that's why. Okay, yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, and
Hmm.
so kind of bearing that in mind, I think it's absolutely wonderful. But it's
I mean, to be fair though, like going round, it was a lot like this was my favorite area because there was a lot of shade. And as a very pale Scottish person, it was very much appreciated that there was this brief moment of like forest. Um, which yeah, but no, I do see that. I do, yeah. I think the good thing about the planting though was that like it never felt wrong for the animal. Like wherever the animals that needed shade had shade, animals that had things that needed to climb, they had the stuff to climb. It was just maybe like different in some of the areas that were perhaps more naturally Arizona. There was a lot
Yes.
less planting, or an appropriate amount of planting, but a less planting than you'd imagine as someone who's used to a different biome. I
I,
guess
I
would be the
think
way
I
I.
think that's the thing, isn't it? I'm used to,
Mm,
there's always quite a lot of planting and things like that because
mm-hmm.
we've not got a particularly harsh climate here,
Yeah.
whereas the climate over there is a lot trickier. Uh,
Yes. It's like this weird, like, yeah, it's like switching your brain to that, like, we're in a desert mode rather than like anything else. So,
yeah,
but no,
exactly. Which is much harder to do for me sat here in a flat in Bristol watching a video rather than you actually experience that overwhelming desert heat.
yeah, yeah. They did also have actually in this area to get us back onto animals instead of just talking about me how sweaty I was. At this point, they had a toucan, and I can't recall in my life ever seeing a toucan before, and so it was very special for me being like, oh, like I have never like I've seen you as you because it's one of the most iconic birds in the world, but I'd never actually seen in real life a toucan. So I thought that was actually really a nice special, like, oh, the finally. I feel like a long lost like friend I finally found. So it was nice. It was really nice. Um to see one finally. Have you ever seen this is when you say, well, in England we have toucans everywhere.
No, I had this epiphany. I had this exact same moment probably about a month after you,
hmm
because I remember you telling me about it and going, "Oh my god, I've seen a toucan," and then I went down to Painted Zoo in November, and they've got a toucan. They've got a few, and like, and I remember going, "Oh my god, they've got a toucan!" Seeing it on the website, and it was exactly as special as you say. It feels like, I don't know if you get this, but whenever I go to like a new city and I see like their big tourist attraction, like whenever I went to Paris and saw the Eiffel Tower, it didn't feel like I was looking at the Eiffel Tower. It felt like I was just looking at a picture of the Eiffel Tower because I'm so used to seeing pictures of it. That's what it
Yes.
felt like looking at a toucan.
Yeah, I suppose, and that's the thing. I didn't even take that many pictures, my own pictures of a toucan, because I know I'm like, there are 1,000 pictures. I just want to experience this moment in real
Yeah,
life right now. Like, it was kind of a weird one where I'm like, I have a couple pictures where I was like, oh, that's quite click, and then like, but like I wanted to actually just experience it in the moment of like, oh, there it is. Look, like it's finally in front of me. Like, I want to see how it moves and how it like cleans itself and how it like flies around. Like, yeah. So it's an interesting one actually, and like it's a bizarre thing to be like an animal person who is so familiar with certain things and then have this thing presented in front of you for the first time and you're like, this is even better, and like it's smaller than I imagined. I think in my mind they were bigger, I
yeah.
don't know. Like, yeah, weird but great. Great. um I don't know, did you have any thoughts, or can we move on to two more birds, one of which has the greatest name I've ever heard in my life?
Oh, you can't leave me into that and then expect me to talk. You've got to put me out of the
So
suspense.
one of them was a flamingo. Cool, whatever, fine. We love flamingos. That's great. The other one I had never seen before, but is called a crested screamer. And I just think that's great. I just think that's I just think that's stellar. Good for them, Crested Screamer. And what makes the Crested Screamer even more special is that it's not particularly colorful. It's not particularly like out there in terms of how you would imagine a bird, except on its wings it has spurs that it uses for fighting. So it has like sharp things on its wings that it can like get into everybody round about it. I don't have a lot to comment on the bird, but that as a concept, if you when whatever force in the universe you believe in or evolution, whatever it was, described that and went, this is what we need. Like, this is what we need. Th- Clearly, whatever controls all of that went, yes, yes, we need all of that right now. And I loved it. I loved it. What are your thoughts on Crested Screamers?
Are they are they the ones? Have they like halfway up their neck? Have they got like a little black mark around it that looks like they're wearing a choker?
Yes, I think
Because
so.
they've got like quite a sticky up hairstyle and then like a little choker, and I just love it because I every time I see one, I'm just like, it's just a little bird wearing a choker going through a little emo phase. I love it.
It's like an emo secretary bird. It's kind of, if someone was
Yes.
to get to describe it, I'd be like, it's kind of like a, yeah, like going through its like edgy phase. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I just loved it. I don't really have anything else. I really built that up, but I don't have anything else to say about it. I
No,
just thought it was really cool.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Next, though, another species I'd never seen before. So we're really racking up species of like, wow, this is fantastic. Was a maned wolf, which has the nickname, apparently, which I had never heard, fox on stilts. Which makes sense because, listeners, if you've never seen a maned wolf, it is literally a fox on stilts. Like, that is what it looks like. And I love it. Like, a bizarre creature, a bizarre looking thing. Could you tell us anything fun about maned wolves, Connor? I feel like you would like them. I feel like they're one of your faves. Or is
Did
this something
well,
you've...
did you get a whiff of them?
No, they were
Did you
asleep.
get a good smell? Oh, you see, if you smell a maned wolf, it they kind of their urine's got a similar kind of skunky type smell, um,
Okay.
but it also smells a load like weed. So
Like the
it's
drug.
yeah, it smells like cannabis. So you walk past and
Thank
go,
you. Let's
oh,
make
it's
it more official. Thank you very much, Connor.
yeah,
It smells like cannabis. Yes.
sorry. So
Uh-huh.
you're walking past going, oh, hang on, is someone having a good time? And it's this maned wolf.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, it's
And
really strange.
yeah. Hmm. That's that I really don't understand that. Like, yeah. And maybe it's just something in the digestive system of the wolf or the like what is that? Well, it's like binge wrong smell like popcorn.
Well, this is the thing. I
Why?
think
Who
it's
knows?
yeah, it's that smell that kind of helps them mark their territory and things, and it just happens that it
It
yeah
smells like
probably has the
cannabis.
same chemicals or something that it releases that
Wow.
smells like cannabis.
Interesting. I did not know that. That's very interesting. But no, they were sadly asleep when I saw them. So they were kind of like they were like Fox on stilts if Fox was not very good at stilts and had just fallen over and gone to sleep. Um, so no, but really cool. And yeah, again, something I hadn't seen.
Have you
Um,
have you seen that Yorkshire Wildlife Park in the UK? They've just had
I
5 baby maned wolves.
I want one. I want like I really hope.
If you haven't
I
seen
feel
them,
like like yeah, I want to go.
yeah,
I'm gonna go
yeah.
because they have Yorkshire Wildlife Park in the UK. Also have Hamish, the polar bear that we had up at the Highland
Yes.
Wildlife Park, the baby. So I want to go and see him. So maybe this can justify the trip even more. Um, is to go and see maned wolves. That's really cool. I like that. Interesting. I will go. I will go. Um, Next we have an anteater. Giant anteater, I believe. I did not see it because it was a giant anteater. It was probably asleep. However, the reason I highlight it is to bring in conservation again. It's been a while since we mentioned a conservation project they support. And that is the fact that they support my good friends. I'm calling us good friends now. My good friends at the Giant Armadillo and Giant Anteater Conservation Project with Arnaud Debier, the person who's been on the podcast twice. He like runs these charities and kind of yeah, I'll put links to the episodes with him in them in the description of this so you can go and listen to him talk. And so he works with giant armadillos and giant anteaters to kind of conserve them in South America, and so they do have this kind of link with them at the Phoenix Zoo, which I think is really exciting and really interesting and positive. That like we kind of talked a lot in the last section about kind of or in the first section about the Arizona area about conservation within the local area, and it's nice to see they're kind of supporting projects beyond the borders of their state. They're kind of looking like further afield, and doing some work with anteaters as well, which I love. And I love anteaters. Everybody loves anteaters. They're just the best. Um, so yeah. Any thoughts or feelings on that? I feel like you'll have a judgy statement given I said something about being good friends with a conservationist.
No, no, because as annoying as it sounds like you actually are very good friends with that conservationist.
I am.
And
I am. That whole organization, I just love it.
no,
I
they are
love
fab.
it so much.
They are
They
fab.
always like my tweets. I love it so much. I'm so grateful for them.
They're
It's so
so
great.
supportive. They sound wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I love that. I love how you can't even. So mine and Connor's relationship, we have been very polite on air. It's very based on judging each other.
Oh
So
god, yeah.
it's quite nice that he's been quite polite today for you listeners. It's very very kind. So next, moving on swiftly, was. I'll mention this first, and then we can move on to more animals. They have kind of like a little like water parky splash zoney area up next, which I think is quite like interesting. I went and like saw that it was there, thought it was a good idea because it was roasting hot and you don't want kids passing out of heat stroke. So yeah, a nice kind of twist and kind of addition. You could not do that in Scotland at any zoo in Scotland because you would have like icicles shooting out into kids' faces, which would be very bad. But yeah, I think generally quite a nice idea. I quite liked it. Quite liked it. Um, so yeah, there was that. I don't know. Any zoos you've ever been to have a water park inside? Not water park, like some splashy water.
Well, Bristol Zoo used to have one.
Oh,
Um,
probably less icicles down there than there would be in Scotland.
yeah, but still, I don't think it was. There was quite a few days where it wasn't able to open because it was too cold. So
I mean,
I mean,
that tracks.
it's that thing of I can see why they're valuable to families, and I can see why kids like them. I don't, I'm not massively fond of them, and
Mm.
it just feels like an extra thing to pack as well. I might have to pack your swimming trunks as well going to a zoo. You've got
Yeah.
it just feels slightly strange and more theme parky than zooey, which I know there's at some places there's quite a lot of crossover, which is its
Mm.
whole debate in itself. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
not for
Uh,
me.
no, not for me either. Maybe if I was at like an adult's day, but not like when there's kids and like
Yeah.
that would just be strange. So no. Next, moving swiftly on. We have the squirrel monkeys. So the squirrel monkeys were in a big walkthrough, queued to get in, had a wander around. At this point, I was almost about to pass out from heat stroke. So I was kind of like rushing around a little bit, and and as you can tell, we've been talking for quite a while, and I still felt like I had so far to go. So I was like sweating. I was getting a bit stressed that there was a lot to do. Like I was having a bit of a moment in the heat, and the squirrel monkeys were lovely, but honestly, at this point, I just needed some shade. So I kind of had a quick look round. It was a squirrel monkey walkthrough, an interesting big squirrel monkey walkthrough that was really great, but it was a squirrel monkey walkthrough. I didn't really have much else to say. Did you have thoughts on squirrel monkeys?
Or no, but another thing that you're potentially taking for granted because that's the only squirrel monkey walkthrough in the US.
Is it actually?
Yeah, according to the Phoenix Zoo website.
Wow. Good
Oh,
research.
yeah.
Good job.
It's
Um,
something we've probably seen quite a few times over in the UK, but it's the only one over
yeah,
there.
because they definitely have one at London Zoo. And then I feel like hmm,
But
maybe it's more special than I thought. Hmm. I can't think of anywhere else that has a squirrel
I
monkey
can't think of
walkthrough. Oh,
anywhere
well,
except
props
London.
to you. Props to you, Phoenix Zoo, for doing something quite special that almost I passed out in. So, yeah, I think the heat was really getting to me at this point because, like, just for
I can imagine.
context, in
I'm
Arizona,
amazed you made it this far.
everybody kept saying, like, oh, like 35 degrees Celsius, that's not hot. I was like, what? And they're like, this is our winter. I was like, I am about to burst into flames. I like, what is happening that you think this is not warm?
I
Like,
think
I
we had
don't,
like 3 days of it last summer, and everyone over here was absolutely miserable.
yes,
I can't
yes.
imagine that being the day to day.
It was dreadful. It was like I was having to like wake up in the morning and like cover myself from in head to toe with moisturizer, buy special shampoo that wouldn't just like turn my hair so it didn't like set onto fire, immediately leave the house wearing like factor like 100 suntan lotion. Like I didn't tan at all while I was there, even though I was outside quite a lot because I was so scared of burning that I just covered myself in suntan lotion. Like I just like mental. Like I don't understand. I don't understand how this was cold. But yeah, anyway, I found refuge from the heat inside a lovely indoor space. Good segue, which was the orangutans. It was kind of the next thing round the so this is where it gets confusing again. Look at your maps. So we're kind of looped back onto the border of one of the kind of like lakey areas, and so we're coming down the lake side, and you get to the orangutans, and they were fabulous. Like I love orangutans. They are probably the greatest of the great apes in my opinion, and it was really nice to see them um, at the Phoenix Zoo. Um, they were right up at the glass, kind of being friendly, looking at the kids, seeing everybody, having a saying hello. And what I actually think is really nice is that beyond kind of the orangutans that they have at the Phoenix Zoo, they work in partnership with a couple different organizations on orangutan conservation things. So, um, yeah, so one of the things on their website is called Hutan, which is kind of working towards a better understanding of orangutan adaptation to human made landscapes. So, looking at how like orangutans live outside of the kind of protected forests that are kind of preserved, how they work and like live in those areas. So they're supporting that project. Um, and then, yeah, they're kind of hoping with that project, once they understand what the orangutans do, to be able to influence the planning and policy around forest, like farming and forestry and planning exercises in the area, which I thought was really interesting. And then the other one that I kind of learned about was called Health in Harmony, which is restoring and protecting orangutan habitat in Gunung Palung National Park, which is in Indonesia. So it's home to a population of about 2,500 orangutans. And yeah, so it's helping to kind of like help with the kind of wildlife corridors in the area, and provide healthcare, livelihoods training, and community conservation education to local kind of communities as well, to make sure that like everybody is involved in the conservation of these animals and everyone's kind of like getting involved and falling in love beyond just like, oh, there's an orangutan. Like they're learning about conservation stuff, which I think is a really interesting kind of program. And again, a nice link beyond Arizona, beyond the US to conservation out in the wild. And I think that's really something that should be applauded when zoos do stuff like that. So that's kind of the orangutan storyline. I
Yeah,
guess as
in terms of
somebody,
kind of ticking
oh,
off another part of that conservation story, isn't it, as well? Because you can do the we're going to do the captive breeding, we can do the we're going to do the reintroduction, and then you've got the kind of looking after the habitat. But then there's also the big
mhm,
issue of people and looking after the people in those habitats and those environments as well. And so
mhm.
it's another big tick on the here are the various different areas you work. Oh, Phoenix Zoo, you work in kind of all of these different ones.
Exactly, exactly. Like it was really like, yeah, it was really really interesting, and like I think it was really like a fascinating kind of like, yeah, I don't know, like a fascinating way of going about things, and like I just, yeah, I really kind of I really rate when zoos do stuff like that, so I really appreciated it. And what I was going to ask though of you is, as somebody who has a strong relationship with Chester Zoo, which is home to two species of orangutan in two fabulously designed kind of spaces, did you look at pictures? What do you think? Could you compare the two? Which one, like, are you like, wow, like this is actually really cool and good? Like,
I
or
did
is that kind of,
from what I saw of this one,
uh huh,
this looked amazing in terms of space. I don't know if you agree, but it
mm-hmm,
looked. Would you say it was
mm-hmm.
bigger than Chester's?
It was hard to. So Chester, so it's one of those ones where it's harder to tell because like Chester's, you walk around the outside pretty much,
Yeah,
whereas this you kind of weave through and around, and like it's less of a like it's harder. Like if you were looking on a map, it's harder to determine size,
yeah,
if that makes sense. So
because
yeah.
it looked pretty big and pretty impressive. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Again, I from the pictures I saw, it may not have been a fair representation. It didn't look like there was maybe as much climbing or as much kind of usable space for them getting around at different heights from
No,
just
I'd
from
say
what
that
I
was a
saw.
fair observation. Hmm.
Um, but yeah, and but it looked impressive, and the opportunities for kind of getting up close and seeing them at kind of ground level as well. Because every point that you see them at Chester, you are kind of up high because there's
Hmm.
kind of opportunities for them to be up high, and the orangutans tend to be higher up. But yeah, the
Yeah.
opportunity to see them at ground level as well. I think this one offers something to I looked at it and thought it looked pretty impressive.
Mm. Yeah, I really liked like yeah. I really liked it. I thought it was a good space. I think yeah, and that's a good comparison. I feel like because they are very different, and so it's an interesting kind of like thought of
Mhm.
like yeah. But no, I think yeah, yeah. I would agree with most of those observations actually. Having seen it in person, like it's similar. Like yeah, I'd say it's big, it's good, but yeah, that elevation thing, there's maybe less, but like yeah, there's still all of the kind of like things to swing and like do, and so yeah,
Yeah.
Chester, I think, yeah, Chester has height, whereas this had like wideness and space, and yeah,
Yes.
um, so yeah, that's fair. I would say that's fair. Um, Continuing round, we have islands with gibbons and and some aviaries and stuff that you can go through to see, which I thought were really interesting. Similar thoughts to the Siamang kind of islands. Excellent. These were buff cheek gibbons swinging around. It was great. The aviaries contain things like Victoria Crown pigeons, which is an instant 10 out of 10 for any zoo that has them. So that was great. Um, but the next thing kind of note to me was like the Komodo dragon area, which was not particularly notable in terms of like, wow, this is the most fabulous like area I've ever seen a Komodo dragon in. I think it was stellar. But what was interesting about it was like it's the first time I think I've ever seen a Komodo dragon outdoors, because obviously in the UK when you have them, even on the hottest days of summer, they don't tend to go out and like bask in the sun. So seeing it so readily outdoors moving around, I thought was really, really interesting. And it was just having a great time. So I really appreciated seeing that. And it was something that like was really interesting to think about, like how temperature and weather of animals kept in different places must impact the behaviors. And so there's not really any global rule that zoos could follow for animal care, because like, well, an animal that has spends 100 times more time outside than a one in the UK does, like, so different. And I thought really, really interesting. So yeah, that was kind of an interesting observation, I guess, from me in terms of like, I like this a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And from the pictures, it looked like the inside was a lot smaller and the outside a lot bigger because whereas we used to see huge enclosures for Komodo dragons inside and then a little
Yeah,
small bit tacked on the end because they're never going to spend any time in it.
exactly, exactly. So it was like really, like, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really thought it was fabulous, and they were alongside Chinese alligators, which I thought were something that were unusual that I hadn't seen before. So smaller than I would have expected for an alligator, but really cool nonetheless. Maybe it was just a young one. Maybe they get bigger, but they were really cool. Um, then next we have, so there's a couple vantage points for this space. So I'll just take it from this one. Is there's a space that has kind of a rhino slash elephant. So it's a greater one horned rhino slash Asian elephant space. And I think what the sign said is that like it's not a mixed species in the sense that they're both in there at the same time, but it's mixed species in the sense that like they have access to both paddocks and they like swap them round to give
Yeah.
them like the enrichment of like smelling the presence of the other one, like trying to work out what that is, and like kind of like seeing like, oh, there's been different stuff going on in this area from another animal, like, which I thought was really interesting, kind of threw me back to the habitat that me and Jodie really liked at Highland Wildlife Park, which was the kind of similar concept with the snow leopards and the Markhor. That's what it
Possible.
was. The Markhor. Yeah. So I thought it was really, really interesting to have this kind of concept. And I thought what was really good was like the interp round about them was actually like talking about both. It didn't really prioritize one over the other. Both were kind of had stellar things. In terms of the elephant, there was beautiful painting of an elephant, which I got my photo taken in front of. I actually had to dab myself down with a towel before I got my photo taken, though, because I was so hot and sweaty. It was disgusting. But the lovely lady who took my photo didn't question that. She just took the photo and then went and was like, "Oh, thank you, like so nice. Why are you?" She didn't question the sweatiness, but you could tell in her eyes she was like, "Oh, this person's about to die." So there was that for them. The elephants. They also had like a big elephant skull like cast, which I thought was really cool to see. Like how like it's like, you know, elephants are big, but when you see their bones like out there in
Mhm.
front of you was really cool.
Yeah.
And then the real highlight of the rhino interp for me was a sign, which I think I'm going to get printed for above my PhD desk, which just said, "There's always time to wallow." Which I'm like, yes, yes, there is. Yes, there is. I love that so much. I feel like that's a tattoo waiting to happen. Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Matching
Yeah.
tattoos?
Yeah, there's always time to wallow. Always. Like, we'll do it. It's fine. Like, whenever you're too warm, you're too full, you're too sad, you're too angry, you're too happy, you just want to wallow. You just wallow. And I think that's the takeaway from Phoenix Zoo. There's always time to wallow. Just loved it. I just loved it. And it's probably the type of sign that somebody who wrote that didn't think twice about what they wrote, but I loved it. Like, oh, so good. So good. I don't know, did you have thoughts? Because obviously this is kind of a uniquer way of presenting elephants and rhino in kind of this swapped around space. What like did you have thoughts on that?
I really like it because I think, if I'm right, they kind of call the whole thing "Giants of the Asian Forest,"
Yes.
um, which I think is a really nice way of doing it to make sure that it's, like you say, not prioritizing one over the other. So, oh, elephant to the Asian forest, and oh, there's also a rhino as well, and
Mhm.
they kind of put each on a pedestal and
Mhm.
kind of like next to each other, which is really nice. Um, I have quite an interesting way of using the space as well, because do they? Am I right in saying, do they have groups, or do they just have one of each?
I think it's one. So there's one of each, which I think in terms of like the rhino would be normal because they hang around by
Yeah.
themselves most of the time. The elephant, I think, less normal, but I think there was a storyline there,
Yes, I think
to
there was. I think I remember
which
reading
was
about it at some point.
yeah, I think it's something that there is a reason the elephant. It's not kept alone for the sake of keeping an animal alone. It's kept alone for a very good reason. Um, and yeah, it's and when we say it's kept alone, it's not kept alone in a way that's very depressing and sad and small. There is so much like space and interpretation and not interpretation. What's it called?
Enrichment.
Enrichment and engagement and for it there. So it is like it's a really good space for it. I think.
Exactly. And I think that I like that as well, in that they've kept it interesting and putting an extra bit in of the kind of rotational environment and
Hmm.
stuff as well, because they've got this elephant in a way that, they have to circumstantially, because of that elephant's individual history,
Hmm.
but to try and keep its welfare and kind of at a high level, they've adapted the enclosure around the needs of that elephant. It feels like.
Hmm. Yeah, which I really really liked, and I really really
Yeah.
rated actually, and like I thought it was really really good. I thought it was a good kind of space, and yeah, I really really liked it. I can see like the good thing about those spaces are that if for whatever reason they wanted to have a breeding pair of rhinos, they could easily like put another rhino in there, and it would still be a huge space. Like the way that they've built it has been very clever in that like it's very adaptable to all of these needs that those
Hmm.
animals have, which I think is really really a positive way to do it. I think. Um, Now moving on slightly, just to keep us going along, we reach the final animals on our tropical trail, which are the tigers and the jaguars. And so I'll run through it all, then we can circle back to both. Because I feel like similar thoughts on both of them. Um, so the tigers, they're Sumatran tigers, and they're working. What I think is really excellent is, of course, they are working with a Sumatran tiger conservation organization, saving Sumatran tigers by reducing tiger human conflict. Um, so they are kind of looking into protection in the areas where there are degraded forests or where there are kind of increasing farmland and where these animals and people are coming increasingly into contact and trying to kind of mitigate the kind of impacts of that and trying to look at they form how can there be a more peaceful and healthy relationship between the tigers and the people that reduces the conflict and maybe like yeah maybe does something a bit more like stable for them all. Similarly, they're working with jaguars on a large number of conservation projects, two different jaguar conservation projects. So they've been working in Costa Rica for 20 years to understand the wildlife there and its needs, which I thought was interesting. And they're working on a jaguar corridor where they kind of obviously the kind of jaguars they're reconnecting the little pockets of habitat that are left to allow the jaguars more freedom to move around. And they're doing that by focusing on habitat restoration, community education programs, and strategic species monitoring, as well as kind of I thought, which was something that I thought was a bit different. They're looking at a jaguar friendly economy to support conservation, which I think is an interesting
Ooh.
take to like. I think like I feel like we've heard about like making sure that
Mhm.
money and things are like economies are considered, but to have it listed there as a jaguar friendly economy, I thought was an interesting way of putting it. Um, and alongside that, something that I thought was really interesting and also kind of to do with Costa Rica, which is why I included it here. Another super interesting thing, which I've never heard anything like this before. So, in Costa Rica, like with a lot of places around the world, poaching is a huge issue. And so, what they have done is created a network of autonomous gunshot detection devices, which will identify the exact location of poachers as soon as a gunshot goes off. Like,
What?
so clever. And I don't fully understand how that works, but the different things must register the distance between like the different things and tell you exactly where that noise came from, so you can then go and say, well, the poacher must be right there, which I think is very clever and very like very advanced in
That
terms
is
of like I don't think I've heard about that
amazing.
anywhere else. Like, so interesting. I've yeah, I've never heard anything like that before, which I thought
No,
was
that sounds
fantastic.
fantastic.
Yeah. And then in terms of like within the zoo, um both of the spaces were good. They were not the biggest tiger nor jaguar habitats I've ever seen, but the theming around them, the signage around them was really good, really interesting, really educational. I do think like if I was to pick apart like an exhibit that needed developing, the jaguar exhibit would probably be the one out of everything in the zoo. Not because it was bad, but because it was small. For my perception, it looked small. I don't know if there was a big area in the back. I don't know, whatever. It just like, and I know it will follow all the guidelines and everything. So I know, you know, that way where you're like, I know deep down that it's okay. But it's one of those things that like me and Jodie have talked about a number of times where it's like, if visitor experience is impacted by the way an enclosure looks, it is important that you think about that. And as a visitor, when I looked at it, even though I know deep down that's okay, and like there was loads of elevation, there was loads for them to do, there was lots of like space, even though I know that like that's all fully within guidelines, those animals will be being looked for after in like the best possible care. As a visitor, it did appear small. So maybe like an expansion to that would be something I would consider, just to give
I've got
people
some
like
good
a,
news for you. Their next
oh,
project is to increase the size of their jaguar habitat and the
oh,
mountain lion habitat from the Arizona Trail as well.
love it. Love it,
So
love it, love it. I knew,
that they're currently
yes.
fundraising for that project to try and build them new habitats. Don't know whether they'll be the same area they are, whether they'll move, but they are currently fundraising for that, and that's going to be the next development after the one that's currently being developed, which we'll probably chat about in a mo.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love that. Like, yes,
Mm.
good homework doing, Connor. Jodie is getting scrapped. I'll text her right now. You're fired. No,
It's
that's
that thing
really,
of again that kind of foresight of the zoo realizing that they have got these enclosures that have maybe been there for quite a while that need a little bit of an update and a little bit of a redo, and then kind of
yeah,
proactively trying to do that before they become, you know, a hindrance to visitor experience.
yeah. I love that. I think that's fantastic. Excellent. Well, then there goes my complaint. So next, um, one final thing to mention before we move on off from the tropics area. There was a conservation project I thought I would mention, which is in the Philippines. They're working with 26 different, or they have been registering different kind of trying to register different species within a national park. They found 26 terrestrial species so far, including numerous threatened species found nowhere else in the world. So they're doing a project in the Philippines, which I don't feel like that fit in anywhere else, but I thought I'd mention it here because I thought that was interesting. Moving on. Uh, we have the last trail, which is, of course, the Africa Trail. Last but not least, um,
And this one looks like, would I be correct in saying, the biggest in terms of space, if not in terms of species?
yes, I would agree 100%. It was the longest to walk round, but had probably the least number of species
Hmm.
in terms of like diversity, which was great for me because at this point I was like, I'm never going to see it all. So basically, at this point, you've looped back to your center area, and now you're going to go up the other side of the lake that we saw the gibbons on. You're going to go up the other side of that. You're going to see some of the other species. I'm so sorry if you're not looking at a map. Get one out. So you're going up the other side, and going round. You're going to see the looking. I'm now looking at my map. You're going to see zebra, lemurs, flamingos, otters, camels, a conservation center, cheetahs, painted hunting dogs, baboons, antelopes, mandrills, rhinos, warthogs, and lions at the time I went. But there was also other stuff there that was being is off show at the time I went, but is now back on show, I think, that we can touch on when we get to it. And so yes, going round again, similar stuff with in terms of like the islands on this lake that you're seeing is your first kind of impression. Lemurs, really fantastic, really interesting. We've talked about them so many times on the show. Like, I don't know if there's a lot I have more to say about them, but I do think really good in terms of like they are similar in the way of the gibbon and the siamang, and that they're quite large primates, so they take up a lot of space, they make a lot of noise, and they're quite good to see on an island setting where they have this kind of like space to interact with each other, which I quite enjoyed. Opposite that, kind of, so there's the lake on one side. On the opposite side, you have the zebra, which normally we wouldn't take time to stop too long at zebra, but I thought it was worth stopping at the zebra this time because they support at the Phoenix Zoo the Grevy Zebra Trust. Because I do think that like people don't think about zebra as an endangered species, and I think it's something that we need to kind of think about more because yeah, it's 90% of the Grevy zebra population is found in Kenya, and so they're working within that space to try and kind of monitor the species and make sure that it is kind of protected within that space, which I thought was really interesting. Are you a particular zebra boy, Connor?
I quite like a zebra. I mean, I think to a lot of people they all look the same, but I quite like the different species. And
Hmm.
yeah, I do find them quite charismatic.
Yes, I think so. I like them. I think their pattern is strong. I think they're beautiful. Fun fact, listeners, if you've not noticed already, the pangolin cover art has zebra on it. I don't know. Did you know that, Connor? Did you
I
notice that?
did.
Thank God, because I just realized like I've never pointed that out before, and I feel like
Mm,
it's
no.
I don't know if people would
Not
have
surprised. I
noticed. I
didn't.
feel
I'm
like it's
number one super fan. I know everything.
obviously. Obviously. Next, there were more flamingos. We saw flamingos earlier on. There were more flamingos here, which I thought were really interesting in a beautiful pool. Followed up by a spotted necked otter, which is an African species of otter, which I'd never seen before. So again, you have this kind of like this kind of twist on the original, or not on the original, on what I would was used to in the UK, with like everywhere in the UK has Asiatic short clawed otters most of the time. I feel like there's not been an episode of the podcast where we haven't mentioned those. Well, here we have otters, but they're a different type, and they look very similar, except they have some white kind of speckling around the neck, and they're beautiful. They're beautiful things. They had them here. They had them at Reed Park Zoo, which we'll talk about next time, and I just loved them. Thought it was really interesting. Um, yeah. Any thoughts on otters?
I also like that they have gone for not Asiatic short claws,
Yep.
because they're absolutely everywhere. And actually, these ones are. It's not necessarily that these are the ones that are everywhere in America and not here in the UK. Um, these ones are quite rare throughout the world. I think there's only actually 18 individuals in the world in captivity.
What? Really?
Yep.
Aren't I a lucky duck? I've seen about
Yep.
four of them.
Yeah.
Oh,
So yeah, there is uh, 8 institutions in North America that have them. So you've seen a quarter
two of. I've seen a quarter
of.
of the. Oh. Maybe that should be the new series. Is the goal is just like I have to go to everyone that has a spotted. Wow, I like that. Good. I didn't know that. That's a fun fact. That is a very fun fact. Yeah, and they were both of the times I saw them, they were eating stuff. So I feel like that's extra
Yeah,
points.
very
Extra
lucky.
unique. Um, Yes. Anyway, moving on from otters, and how special that's made me feel. The next thing you come to is camel rides.
I had a lot of thoughts about this. I
I
saw
have
that and immediately
no.
went, "Ooh,
Hmm. I don't know where I am sitting on this because I can see camels have been used as transportation vehicles for years and years and years, similarly to how horses have been used and how donkeys have been used. So I can see the justification behind like having like behind riding camels. I understand like why that would be a thing. But then within a conservation space where you're trying to teach people about the value of animals beyond necessarily what they can provide humans and their relationship with humans, I thought it was an interesting and difficult conundrum to work out whether that was okay or whether that was a space that you wanted to kind of like venture into. And I couldn't. I just was like, and that'll come down to like there will be listeners right now listening thinking it's wrong. There'll be listeners thinking, yeah, okay, that seems like a good way to engage people. And I don't know I don't like I am I don't know what my stance is. I don't. What were your thoughts?
My thoughts were bad vibes also, in that I understand that they have been used, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, throughout history, and they are a way of getting kind of being used as transport in kind of the regions where you find them out in the wild and things like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that kind of juxtaposition between look at all these amazing animals that we're protecting out in the wild and seeing as valuable in themselves, and then kind of going, oh, but look, we can sit on this one and ride it around, and isn't that really fun? That doesn't quite sit right with me in the same way, and in the same way that I also personally, I don't, especially within that setting, I wouldn't say horse riding would be a very kind of a thing that would sit well within a zoo either. And that I don't
No.
disagree with horse riding, but I think if you were paying to ride horses around in a zoo, that still wouldn't sit right with me either.
Yes, that's yeah. I think yeah. I guess it's about what you think the purpose of a zoo is, and what you
Yes.
think about what the purpose of a zoo is, and as like a family attraction, yeah, camel rides must bring so much joy to kids and like all these things. But in terms of conservation, it's not
It,
something I would necessarily have pushed towards as
mm,
like a concept, because I also think like that's not to say all keeper experiences and stuff within zoos are bad, because I think there's a big difference between riding an animal and providing an animal with food, or providing a fat animal with
mhm.
enrichment, or providing some kind of like I don't like it just feels different somehow, and I don't know, I can't like I I can't fully explain it, but it just feels different, and like I don't know. I don't
No,
know.
it feels like one of the biggest criticisms that is leveled against zoos by people that may not agree with them is that zoos only use animals for entertainment purposes. And I
Yep.
think this feels like the whole benefit and the role of those camels being there feels slightly too much entertainment and not potentially enough education, conservation, and kind of having them there so people can see them as a kind of
Mm.
species where that interaction is mainly about, oh, I can get a fun time from riding on this animal.
Yeah, and they also did have a horseback riding center. So the whole the whole situation is an odd one, and like yeah, I don't know. I don't love it. I really don't love it. But I don't. Yeah, I, d- I really don't think it's. I don't want to take too much of like a harsh stand and say like Phoenix Zoo is evil. Like that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is like this is an area which I would, if I was them, think more about in terms of like
Yes,
it.
and I'm
And
sure
I
I'm
don't know
sure the
whether.
camels that are involved in that are perfectly well looked after and
Yeah.
have all their welfare needs met and everything. It's not necessarily an animal welfare issue.
Yes.
It's perception as a whole and whether that is the kind of best way to showcase those animals.
Yes. Excellent. Yes. Excellent way of putting it, I think. And I think a perfect segue of like how I fully believe in Phoenix Zoo and everything that it does in terms of conservation beyond this one maybe spec is of like things that I'm like, oh, I don't know, is the next thing you come to, which just to move us on slightly,
Hmm.
is the Arthur L. and Elaine V. Johnson Foundation Conservation Center, which is where a lot of the breeding programs and things we've mentioned previously are run out of. Um, and yeah, I think just to touch on a couple of things, they run breeding and release programs for things like leopard frogs, pygmy owls, garter snakes, as well as the black-footed ferret, which is the one that I kind of referenced right back at the beginning when we were talking about the prairie dogs, because
Hmm.
it's a kind of a complicated, interesting one where like the black-footed ferret was thought to be extinct twice in the past, and its main like the problem that it's having with in terms of like reintroducing it is that its main food is prairie dogs, but as prairie dog numbers have been pushed down as well, trying to bring back the ferret then becomes almost impossible, and so they at the Phoenix Zoo are trying to kind of tackle that and work around that and try and reintroduce them, and I think that's a really applaudable thing that they do, and I think a really excellent like excellent project that they are part of. I think it's really, really interesting. So yeah, this center, like, you can't go into it, but you can read all about the projects on the outside, and you can kind of see various things. And it did look like maybe you could, like, obviously there's people working there, so maybe they do tours and stuff at some point. But just for me as general public, you could just kind of look in the windows and see what was going on. But it was very good. It was very, very good. Thoughts?
I like the conservation being put on show and you being able to see and go, oh, okay, what does conservation actually mean? What does it look like day to day? And you can go up and look at the windows and have a poke in and go, oh, this person's looking after these animals in all these tanks. Maybe you can't see those animals. Maybe, they're teeny tiny frogs that you can't quite spot, but you can see where all those animals that are being bred are kept and things like that. And I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Yes, I really, really loved it. I really, really, I thought it was nice. And I think that's a good thing of, like, allowing science into people's lives
Mm-hmm.
and making it, like, open and accessible is such an important thing. Because I think when people say science or conservation or whatever it is, there's all these connotations that it's really tricky behind the scenes things in labs that are kind of, no one can see what's going on. It's all like, ooh, like, super, like, behind secretive stuff. But actually, it's a lot of stuff that can be shown, and I think is really engaging when people do get to see it. So I think it was a really nice way of doing that. Really, really nice way of doing it. Um, yeah. Then we get back to Africa. I feel like we took quite a detour there for a second. We're back to Africa now, though, and in Africa we have things like the cheetahs, painted dogs, baboons, antelopes, drills, rhinos, and they're kind of presented in this kind of passageway where you walk through, and on either side they're kind of sprawled out. And I feel like there was people following me around by the end of it, because as a zoo person, I was able to spot all of these animals that in the heat were hiding in the shade. And even if a cheetah is hiding in the shade, I feel less bad about the fact that I was also about to pass out. So yeah, so yes, saw all of these various things, and they were in these big, open, like, nice spaces. Um, I thought it was really, really nice. I thought it was really interesting seeing, like, all of the different kind of African kind of apes presented along, or African kind of primates presented alongside um, the kind of other mammals, because I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the time, like, primates are put in a primate house, like we talked about at the start, with, like,
Yeah.
a lot of the time they're kept separate, but this having them in the space, I think, painted this picture with the kind of antelope, the nyala, the little gazelle, the rhinos. I think it really created a very nice open space where, like, you can see how this ecosystem in
Mm-hmm.
pieces fits together. And I thought that was really, really nice as a whole. I don't know if I have much to comment on each of the individual spaces, but I think as a whole, this area worked really, really nicely, really, really well.
Nice.
Um, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know if you have anything. I keep forgetting that you weren't there, so I'm like, oh, I lead into, like, and what did you think? I'm like, oh, he wasn't there, so he doesn't know. But it was really nice. It was really, really nice.
Yeah, I didn't see any
um,
pictures of any of these habitats or anything, so um I don't quite know what they all looked like. But I just think, as a species, was it a Hamadryas baboon? I
yes, yes,
Yes, I think they are a wonderful species. Just as a thing, that's just me putting in a little shout out. They're a really charismatic primate. They're slightly more interesting than your standard baboon. They've got a bit more of a kind of
yes,
a bit more of a look. The fur's different. They're a bit more kind of exciting to look at. Um,
yes.
I think they're absolutely fantastic.
They're really like, they're just fantastic. Like, they're
Yeah, how
beautiful
big was the
things.
group? There was quite a few.
I can't remember. I think that there was at least a couple. I think there was, like, a quite. I can't, like, and yeah, I can't really remember. I didn't spend. I'm not going to be long lying to you, Connor. I didn't spend long here because I was too busy looking for, like, I'd seen those animals before, so I was like, I'm gonna look. I'm running out of time. I'm gonna look more on the other side where there were the kind of, like, gazelles and stuff that
No,
I
that's
don't
fair.
think I'd seen, like, a springbok, or like I hadn't seen these things before. So I was
No,
like, I
that's
want to go
fair
and try
enough.
and see them. So yeah, but no, they were. It was really nice spaces for them, and there was a lot of space to climb and play and do various things. Um, the one thing that I will highlight in this area that I thought was really, really funny and really bizarre, and, like, zoos in the UK do this too, so it's not an American exclusive thing, but it does seem very Americanized, is having an advert for something in the middle of the zoo. And the advert was a Toyota Highlander car with a rhino horn strapped to it. And the A frame next to it read, The Toyota Highlander is a lot like our rhinos, Lulu and Howie. They're strong, agile, and a family favorite. I was like, oh, okay, okay, Toyota, we see you, we see you. you, I mean, I think it's quite funny. I do think it's very like in terms of like commercialism of and sponsorship. I feel like good that Toyota is donating money to presumably the zoo.
Yeah,
But it just was a bit of a weird one to see, like,
I
because
can
it had
imagine
like
how
a
that might be a little bit jarring.
yeah, it was just a bit like, okay, cool, 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 cool. Bold one, bold one. But yeah, go for it, go for it. But the rhino space itself, aside from the Toyota, was very lovely. It was very leafy. It was very green. It was closed off, I think, because they were working with the rhinos that day. But you could still there was enough spaces to like that you could see them through like the leaves and stuff, which was quite nice. Um, and just overall, I thought it was a good area. I thought it was really good, and it had like a nice picnic space near it as well, which was in the shade to allow for like time to cool down, get out the sun, relax, get a drink, which I thought was quite nice.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, I did open. I remember I was carrying a bottle of Diet Coke in my bag, and I opened it at this point, and because it had been in my bag, like shaking on my back all day, it kind of exploded all over me. But you know, you live and learn. We got through. Um, and so yeah, continuing round, so you kind of you walk through this kind of passageway with all these African species, and then you kind of loop round and up to kind of past the rhino. We kind of go round them, and then you see lions. At the time, what was lions, and you see warthogs, which were excellent as well. The warthogs were some of the most confident warthogs I've ever seen in my life. They were up like, "Hi, what's going on?" Love that. And the lions were some of the laziest lions I've ever seen, but that's not really that's kind of like lions in general. They just lie and bask in the sun. So there was kind of that contrast there, which was quite nice. Um, and yeah, so there was the lions and stuff that kind of finished that kind of loop. Oh no, they didn't finish the loop off because there was a big grassland area, but they kind of finished this bit of the path off, I suppose. Um, before, yeah. So these were good spaces again, very nice shady spaces with lots of planting. Um, nothing particularly um special. I would not like not special, but not nothing particularly like wow. Like I remember this as being like fantastic. Like it was a
Hmm.
nice space to see the lions. It was a good space for the lions, and yeah, I thought it was quite good. What I'm excited to see though and talk about is like what comes up next, which is you get to the top of this hill. And you kind of see this kind of big grassland area that contains giraffes and vultures and all sorts of kind of like plains creatures, which I thought was really cool. And then also, they're developing a whole new predator corridor in this area, which I think is going to have new homes for things like their hyenas and their lions, which are going to be more expansive, bigger, nicer spaces. And I think now, at time of recording, the hyenas are back on show in another area. When I was there, they weren't. So I think like, but as they develop, I think they're going to create this big, nice predator space alongside the grassland, which I think will be a really cool new way to see the predators. And I think the way when I walked through it, looking at it when it was the way, even the way it was now, was really really cool and like really really interesting. I really liked it. Really really liked it. Yeah, I don't know. Did you have thoughts on any of these sorts of bits and pieces?
I'm equally excited for their Predator Passage that they're calling it, um, because yeah, they're rehoming the lions there, rehoming the spotted hyenas there as well, and they're doing what they do with the rhinos and the elephants, and that they can swap them between the two outdoor spaces, so they can do that in Richmond as well. But as well as that, they're also bringing in leopard.
That's and that's really the big kind of three African
Yeah.
carnivores that you're thinking of. So
Now,
yeah.
the one thing I know, they're bringing in a mer leopard,
Oh,
um, but for the reason that it's closely related to the African leopard. I don't know if there's many African leopards about in captivity. I'm not too sure, but the Amur, I believe, are more endangered. So I believe they're bringing that in to tie it in to the area as closely geographically as they can, while also being a new holder in the captive breeding program. So again, it's probably twisting the geographic thing a little bit and kind of stretching it a bit, but also doing it in that they can have the max kind of contribution to conservation.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think that's a clever way of doing it. Like
And I
people still
imagine
get leopards. Like yeah,
exactly, and I imagine their interpretation will focus a lot on you wouldn't find this animal here. but this is why we have it. Yeah, they're also moving the warthog over, and much to mine and I'm sure your disappointment, they're getting meerkats as well.
I mean, I feel like, yeah, okay. I don't hate meerkats. I do just think they're overrated. So maybe if someone out there is a meerkat expert and wants to come to talk to me, please do, because I'd love to grow a love of meerkats. But yeah, right now it's not happening. Um, so yeah, no, that's fair. That is fair. And it sounds like a really exciting, and it looks like a huge development. Like you walk through it kind of to get to the end, and I think that's kind of like so exciting, so exciting. And yeah, just to bring it back to conservation a little bit more as well, they are working in Tanzania, Phoenix Zoo. They're working with the Ruaha, Ruaha, I think, carnivore project, which is about resolving conflict through communication. So they're trying to use education programs to try and reduce carnivore, like human wildlife conflict, which I think is really a nice way of kind of tying in conservation again to the species that they have in the zoo and the things that they support. So yeah, I think that was the last of the trails done. It took us a lot longer than I thought, and there's still a
It
couple
did.
bonus things that I want to mention. But yeah, that is us done the majority of Phoenix Zoo. So all we have now is the bonus stuff and to wrap up because we've been going for 2 hours and 20 minutes. The recording says we need to stop soon because I
Blimey
might
there.
explode like with like and I'm recording another podcast later today. Jeez, I'm gonna be
Right, who are you
completely
recording with later?
voiceless. I'm recording an episode all about pangolins later on, in approximately 20 minutes. So let's be speedy. So yes, the bonus stuff that I wanted to mention for Phoenix Zoo was Dinosaurs of the Desert, which was their dinosaur display. I want to talk a little bit about the gift shop, the food, and the price. Um, and so, starting with Dinosaurs of the Desert, it is a classic dinosaur display like you find in many zoos, but the twist here is that it's in the desert. So it feels a lot more like the classic Walking with Dinosaurs type documentaries that you may have watched at some point. Um, and it was actually really, really good. Like shockingly, really, really good. I sometimes think these things can be a bit tacky and a bit rubbish, and there are often like there was a couple of things where I was like, you look a bit crazy, model Siberian kind of not like what's the the tigers with the big saber-tooth
Smilodon.
tigers, Smilodon. Yes. So there was a couple looked a bit iffy, but I thought generally as an event it was really good and it was really cool, and they built it up nicely in this kind of desert setting. The only downside to it was that within this dinosaur of the desert section there were bighorn sheep and Arabian oryx, which I feel could have been highlighted more, especially given the Arabian oryx. They were a big part of the reintroduction of that species, and like they did a lot of conservation work on it, which is fabulous and fantastic. So to have it kind of in the middle of this display, I think kind of made it second best,
Mm.
which it should never have been. So there was a kind of iffiness there, but overall, I thought the dinosaur event was quite good. Do you have thoughts on dinosaur events in zoos? They seem to be everywhere now.
Yeah, I think they're a good way of getting people through the door, and if people come for the dinosaurs and stay for the animals, I think that's a good way of kind of bridging a gap and getting people in that might not have come if it was just for the animals. Maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I I think I agree. I think in a lot of places they can often come off a bit tacky and a bit overdone. But I think if they're done well, I think they can be a really good addition.
And this one was definitely done well. Like it wasn't like oh, you've thought about this at the last minute and shoved it in. Like this was a really nice, and it told kind of a story with like it was not just dinosaurs; it had mammals and insects and all sorts of other stuff. So it was a nice kind of mix of
I like
stuff,
that
which I thought was
especially. I
really
think
good.
if you're going to do it, if you include as many different animals from kind of prehistoric times as you can, and not just the big scary dinosaurs,
Exactly,
I think that's even better.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it was really good. So that was excellent. Um, then the other things, gift shop. Gift shop was good. Gift shop was fantastic. It was small, but the stuff that it had was quality. It felt like so. It
Nice.
felt weirdly small given the size of the establishment. Like
Hmm.
it felt like a small zoo's gift shop, but in a zoo that was the size of like I don't know, like in the UK, the equivalent would be like Chester, but it was probably bigger than Chester. Like it was, so like it had the gift shop of that was maybe it was just small. It was just small, which I thought was weird. Clearly, it works for them. and maybe they're developing a bigger gift shop. There was a lot of building work going wrong around the entrance, so maybe that's part of the plans. But yeah, I feel like they could ramp that up a little bit. The items, of course, were classic zoo prices, so they were a little pricey, some of the things, but the quality was good, the range was good, and I kind of enjoyed seeing the different things they had. Food we kind of touched on was good.
Hmm.
Nothing major to complain about there or to praise there. I thought it was generally very nice. Um, and then the price overall, we talked about at the start, $40 was a lot, but having gone round, I could have spent 2 or 3 days in Phoenix Zoo. Like I could
Yeah.
have spent days and days of my life in there, and so I would have said $40. I wouldn't have even batted an eyelid at that as a price, having experienced it. I do think it is a shame because I often think about like families who maybe wouldn't be able to access a zoo at that price, or like people who wouldn't be able to access a zoo at that price. And like I obviously, my main thing is zoos. Like I love going to them, so I save up the money so I can go and experience these things, and that's my like way of spending my holiday. But like local families who maybe like are saving money,
Yeah.
that wouldn't be their priority. So I would be interested to hear about like what kind of programs the zoo runs, maybe to bring local kids in or local families in who like realistically for a family ticket you're looking maybe at upwards of $200 for a day. Like that's an expensive day out. So
Yeah.
like I'd be interested to hear about those types of things. But as someone who loves zoos and had saved the money to go, that is, yeah, that was worth it for me 100%. Really really loved it. Really really loved it. Um any final thoughts from you, Connor?
Only that I'm really jealous that I've not been to it now. I'll
Oh,
be honest with you, I didn't have it on my list of zoos to go to if I ever go to America, and now I think I'll have to make a bit of a trip out my way if I ever make it over.
I think you should. I think you should. Like it was really like fabulous. It was really good, and I'm like just thinking like because I need to do my 2 stars and a wish, um, and like I don't even know how to narrow it down. Like I don't know how to narrow it down, but we'll work it out. We'll work it out. So yes, 2 stars and a wish as we always wrap up, and then I might give you one as like a what made you the most jealous. So my
Ooh.
so my 2 stars, I guess for me, number one would be the Siamangs because I'd never seen them before, and it was amazing to see a baby one, and it was just beautiful, and I'll never forget sitting at the gate as I was about to leave, seeing this thing. The sun was kind of going down a little bit, and it was just gorgeous and beautiful, and I loved it. So that would be one, and then my second star, I'm looking, would probably be the Arizona Trail. I'm just going to say the Arizona Trail because that as a unit of things going on was probably one of the best things I've ever seen in a zoo in terms of a celebration of nature while also putting actions in behind the words that you're speaking. That whole thing was just like fabulous and I loved it and I thought it was excellent. So that would be my 2 stars and a wish. Or my 2 stars. What made you jealous? And then I'll do my wish.
I I think I'm going to have to steal one of your stars as well. I think the biggest thing is the Arizona Trail because just
Hmm.
everything I've seen of it looks absolutely kind of designed to perfection,
Yeah.
and the variety of species that they managed to take from one single area and put into this incredibly very immersive seeming exhibit, and a whole range of species that I've never seen before as well because they've
Yeah.
not quite made it over into captivity over here. It just, if I'm looking at this and going, okay, what is one thing there that I won't have seen anywhere else, that I won't have seen anything that kind of compares to it of the same kind of standard, I think the
Hmm.
Arizona Trail is the thing that makes me go, damn, I wish I'd seen that.
Yeah. I think that's very very fair. I think that's very very fair because it was the best thing ever, and you should be jealous. No. um, I know. I guess then, in terms of a wish, my one wish would be probably to do with the camel rides. I'd like to learn more about that and just how they justify it and what like the reasoning behind it is. Maybe there's very just reasons, and maybe it's like a thing that they do for a certain reason. I didn't experience it. I don't know, but that's the one thing where I kind of have an
Hmm.
ickiness sitting around. Um, so yeah, that would be my one wish, I think. Um, but to wrap up, as we always do, I also have to think of a word of the ReZOO. I don't know. Throughout, I've been kind of thinking, and like, I think the word of the ReZOO is going to be 2 words. And maybe you'll disagree with me, and I would like your thoughts on this. But given the temperature, and also given how fantastic it was, I would like to say that Phoenix Zoo, somewhat ironically also because it's named after a phoenix, which is a firebird. It's so funny. It works on so many levels. I'd like to say Phoenix Zoo was hot stuff. Jodie would have made exactly that same face.
Oh my! I don't think I can roll my eyes hard enough.
No, you almost tipped backwards off your chair. That's how.
I respect it a lot because it works on a lot of levels. I really enjoy it, and I think I can't disagree with it. I can't disagree.
Yeah. It was so much hot stuff, I almost burst into flames and probably dropped about 10 kilograms just in water weight throughout the day. So, hot stuff for Phoenix Zoo. I am standing by it and I'm proud of that and I'm happy. Um, and on that note, we must end because we've been talking for far too long. This will definitely be a 2-part episode. And so, yes, thank you so much for listening, everybody. Thank you so much for Connor for being here. Before I wrap up and say my piece, if the listeners want to check you out, find out more about what you do, where should they go to learn more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I on Twitter or Instagram at Connor LJD. And if you want to know a bit more and find out about the podcast that we've got, which by the time this airs will hopefully have had its first episode or a few episodes come out, we're called Planty Zuzu. As a reminder, we run a hypothetical zoo, botanic gardens, and each week, me and Steph, my co-host, we present a species of plant and a species of animal that we need to add to the zoo. We discuss how we're going to present it, why we think it should be there, why it deserves a place in our zoo, and chat a little bit more about how it's doing out in the wild as well. So please do come and give us a listen. We're on all the socials as well, at Planty Zuzu on Instagram or at Planty Zoo on Twitter.
Love it. And it's such a I can't that way where I'm like, the first time I read the name, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. But the more people say, the more I say it, and the more you say it, I'm like, I love this because it's silly and just stupid fun, and I love it.
It was literally the best one that we could come up with, which tells you quite a lot about the other names we came up with. But it feels very us. It feels very appropriate for how ridiculous this podcast is going to be.
I love it. And in terms of the podcast, for listeners to understand the dynamic, you're definitely the Jodie, and Steph is definitely the me. That's the vibe. And so, yes, speaking of my show, we should wrap up now before we ramble on for any longer. So, yes, my name is Jack. Thank you for listening. You can find the show on Pangolin on at Pang. Blah, blah, blah. I messed up so badly. We're going again. Right. My name is Jack. You can find Pangolin the Conservation Podcast on all of the major streaming platforms, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcast from. You can find us on there, rate us, review us, give us a nice 5 stars, whatever you want to do, we're on there, and make sure to subscribe. You can also find us on social media. We are at Pangolin Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you get your podcast content from, we're there. And we are also, you can follow me on social media at The Only Jack Baker on Instagram or at Only Jack Baker on Twitter. So, that's everything. Thank you so much for your first appearance, Connor. It was, well, I was going to say more than I could have imagined. It was definitely more than I could have imagined in terms of length. But at the same time, probably not that surprising. But thank you so much. It was fantastic. It was wonderful. It was great to chat to you. I can't wait to talk to you again soon for our upcoming Reed Park Zoo review. And yes, I guess until next time, thank you so much, listeners. Thank you so much, Connor. And goodbye.
Goodbye.